Donald Trump has been in office as the 47th president of the United States for, I think, 5 days now, and the world is on fire. The libs have been freaking out. There are people that are already complaining that Donald Trump is turning the world upside down. He's talking about he's already started sending criminals out of the country. There are planes flying them out. They're getting arrested by ICE. He's talking about getting rid of FEMA. He's talking about all kinds of stuff. So we're going to start talking about that tonight. We got FEMA turned out to be a disaster, Trump says. We're going to talk about the State Department issuing immediate widespread pause on foreign aid. That's a pretty big deal. I think that we all kind of around here generally disapprove of foreign aid. So we'll talk about that. Target is reeling from the return of Donald Trump, and they're getting rid of some of their DEI programs. And that's not the only company to do it. There's a bunch of places. There's the ATF is trying to hide their DEI people, like shoving them under the rug and stuff. Trump went to California and talked to Gavin Newsom, added all kinds of strings to getting funding for the fires that are out there, which is not a surprise. I mean, that's how there's the 21-year-old age for drinking, because all of your federal funding comes with strings attached. He's talking about that's the Target one. And then we're talking about Mexico has decided that they're going to try to refuse to accept planes that are deporting people. We might get into the border issues, sending the U.S. military down to the border. I think there's something along the lines of 3,000 troops that are going to be going, and they're going to be armed. It's not just a support role. But before we get started, head on over to castbrew.com. Get yourself some Ian's Graphene Dream, the low acidity coffee. Look, man, I like coffee. I have coffee in here. It's good. Everybody likes coffee. Go buy some. You can get yourself some at castbrew.com. I think there's some Focus with Mr. Bocus still, right? We got Focus with Mr. Bocus in there. Oh yeah, some of this Focus with Mr. Bocus. The Appalachian Nights is the one that everyone kind of is attracted to the most. But go on over there and get yourself some coffee. Then head on over to timcast.com and join us. Become a member. Join the Discord. Get in there and talk to like-minded people. If you join the Discord after a little trial period, you can call in and you can talk to us. You can make jokes. You know, there's a bunch of after shows and there's pre-shows and there's other shows that are started. It's a great community that you should go ahead and get in there and be a part of. And joining us to talk about this and so much more, we have Elijah Schaffer.
Nice to be here. You know, you said Ian's Graphene Dreams, and I think the last time Ian had a little too many graphene dreams when he was a teenager, his mom found his crusty sock at the end of the week. That's all I'm saying. It was a graphene
Friday.
dream. He had graphene dreams. He came on my show. He talked about them. He's a talented guy. No, my name is Elijah Schaffer. I was here today on Culture War. Shout out to everybody who's there. I'm the CEO of Vigilant News and also have a new show on YouTube called Almost Serious. It's brand new episodes every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern. So if you watch a show on Fridays, you can either catch it before, right after Culture War, or catch it later tonight. Check it out. Links in the description. Sign up because we need your support. And I'm also here to deport Elad.
Elad is here.
I think we're deporting you to Australia first. Elijah, it's been a long time. It's good to see you. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. My name is Elad Eliyahu. I'm a field reporter here at Timcast News. I had a really good time covering the March for Life today. It was very politically... It was a good time, we'll say the least. And we'll have coverage of that on the Tim Pool YouTube channel on Monday. Be on the lookout for that. Brett, what's up?
Oh, guys, it's Brett. I'm probably the least likely of anyone here to get deported, but my name is Brett. I do Pop Culture Crisis Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Happy to be here tonight. Let's get into it.
So FEMA turned out to be a disaster. Trump calls for overhaul, eradication of federal emergency aid agency. Look, I like the idea of downsizing the government, and whatever shape that takes, I'm probably going to be for. So The Post-Millennial says, on Thursday, President Donald Trump said he will be signing an executive order to reform the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, or get rid of the agency altogether. During a stop in Asheville, North Carolina, an area ravaged by Hurricane Helene, Trump held a press conference in the airport and said, I'll also be signing an executive order to begin the process of fundamentally reforming and overhauling FEMA, or maybe getting rid of FEMA. Trump was on the ground to assess hurricane damage months after two tore through in rapid succession. I think, frankly, FEMA's not good, Donald Trump says. I think when you have a problem like this, I think you want to go, and whether it's a Democrat or Republican governor, you want to use your state to fix it and not waste time calling FEMA, Trump added.
Well, I mean, does anybody really find it strange, given North Carolina and Hawaii, that people would be doubtful about whether they're able to actually do anything of note?
No, I don't think that it's a stretch at all. I mean, I think that personally, I think that the federal government should be downsized. So if they can streamline getting funds to disaster areas, and you don't have to have FEMA to be the arbiter of who does and does not get the funds.
So who would it come? Like, if it wasn't to come through FEMA, then it would come through what department?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Through the state instead of the federal government.
Okay. No. Oh, so you're saying not even have the federal government?
As I understand, FEMA's federal, and then if they didn't have their help, it would just be through the state.
Okay.
So. Yeah, and they say FEMA stands for things like fails every month. Yeah, absolutely. Like, you can guarantee whatever they do, they're going to fail in. I think Trump is being smart here because he's not saying we're going to stop the federal funds to disaster zones. What he's pointing out is that FEMA, like the TSA or any of these government agencies, is probably like bloated with waste and corruption. You see that, right? Like, FEMA takes sometimes days to a week or more to get on the field. You already have emergency crews from locals going out. Plus, once they get there, they sort of get in the way of locals actually helping, and so they end up causing more problems than good. And they were against Trump supporters.
That's true. And it's also a great point. They do take the time that they take, especially in the modern era. Like, it's not a surprise when a hurricane hits, right?
They're like, oh my gosh, who predicted
would have
this?
thunk? You
I've
know,
been watching a live stream for 2 weeks about it. Where were you?
Whether it be a hurricane or the snow that just happened across the southeast, into Florida and places that don't normally get snow, you had warning. It's 2025, and there's a significant significant infrastructure to predict the weather and predict these kind of things. Sure, when it comes to something like an earthquake. If there were an earthquake in California, then okay, everyone gets surprised about an earthquake. But even forest fires, the fires that California is experiencing, going through, it's not a surprise that California is having fires. They have fires every year. So the idea that you have to take so long to get under the ground to actually have people start helping, I don't think that's actually the case. I think that you're right. It is federally, it's bloat from the federal government.
What was the purpose? I remember the story about federal government employees getting involved and saying that locals couldn't help. Was that something to do with liability? Like, I was surprised by that, but I didn't know any more about it.
I don't know anything about why.
Yeah.
A lot of times the jurisdiction, there's arguments over who does and does not have jurisdiction, so I'm not sure. But you had also made another good point, Elijah. The fact that FEMA, like everything else in the federal government, has been politicized.
Yeah, they've been super politicized. I also think that it's not safe to say that they don't know there's going to be an earthquake, because I'm from LA, and it's like we all know that there's going to be. Even an average family has to have an earthquake prepared emergency kit in their home. The state tells you to do it. Your county tells you to do it. I mean, this is common stuff, right? I've been at least in a strong enough earthquake that it knocked my TV over and broke it. Born and raised in Whittier, we had the Whittier earthquake. It was really, really catastrophic, right there on the fault lines in the Whittier Hills. Shout out to the people in East LA over there. But that being said, I mean, not only that, but they discriminated against Americans. And to answer your question, I mean, okay, on one hand, I got to support FEMA because there's the most lesbians, I think, in the history of the department currently serving there right now. And shout out to those people who are into crafts, and sometimes you use scissors, whether it's in the classroom or in the bedroom. I mean, good for you. But to the rest of you guys who are out there, I mean, I don't know. I mean, lesbians have not been known to do much more than maybe be involved in domestic violence. So I think one of the main things that I take away from this is that these agencies are about, woke policies. They're about replacing, qualified individuals. When I was there, I remember people couldn't get jobs in departments like this in LA because they were white men. And so these places are corrupt institutionally on who they hire. They're bloated in their budgets. They have slow response teams. They're also discriminatory in their handbooks towards people based on their politics. And you said, why don't they let people go? People do speculate on this, but what I've heard the best theory is that the government, FEMA, is in such a catastrophic position that they have to stop American citizens from helping because it'll make them look bad, and they have to be needed and wanted. So if Americans are faster at responding, getting supply chains set up faster, and are more reliable than FEMA, then what does that mean about FEMA? It should be dissolved. And they don't want that, and they're in a very dire position, so they were trying to stop that in North Carolina. So instead, they just stopped helping. It's like they just stopped.
I mean, the idea that the Federal Emergency Management would stop, right? They would say, look, we need to prevent people helping. We need to prevent the locals from helping because the help will make us look bad. Part of me says, no, that can't be true. There's no way that would happen. But then I also think about this is the federal government, and this is probably the least far-fetched and least crazy thing, that thing that's been discussed about FEMA and how they distribute aid.
Well, remember the X-Files predicted a long time ago that FEMA was an absolutely evil agency. That had to do with alien abductions and coercion between the United States government and alien colonists. But same thing.
So if there were an alien race that visited the U.S., do you think that FEMA would be involved and they would be facilitating?
Well, if there was a crash, right, like they crash in Roswell, and you don't send any unit other than FEMA over there to get them. Absolutely.
At all?
Yeah.
No one else?
No one else.
Not even like the military?
Well, I'm sure that military contractors would be working with them, right?
With FEMA or
with FEMA.
With the aliens?
With FEMA.
Okay.
At this point, under Biden's administration, we were like 1 year away from having FEMA be literal aliens, like illegal aliens, right? And on top of that, I always thought it's weird, like FEMA can't get aid across LA because AIDS spreads quicker in Los Angeles than anywhere in the entire country. I mean, look at West Hollywood, right? So it's like,
I don't think that it's actually
as ineffective as any agency.
Yeah. Well, like, okay, but jokes aside, we do know LA is mismanaged. We know that the federal government's mismanaged. This isn't sort of is anyone surprised? And so what I think what's going to happen here is this is going to be a battle against people, again, believing the mainstream media, taking the establishment institutional position versus believing our eyes, right? Once again, it's like, did Elon Musk sig heil? Yes. No. Did he do it on purpose? No. Obviously, he was saying he's autistic, and he was saying, I give out my heart or whatever. And he's autistic, so you're making fun of a disabled person. You guys who are accusing him of racism are ableist. But the most important part about that is it's like, look, we can look with our eyes. We know what the mainstream media is saying. We know their lies. We know their tactics. And so with someone like FEMA, we just saw them credibly fail and get exposed for anti-Trump corruption. If you're new to this, basically there was a memorandum sent out to teams in the recovery in Florida that literally told them directly to overlook homes with Trump signs. And that's on top of their handbook that said to not hit up white areas or affluent areas first, but help queer and black people first. This is in their handbook. Yeah. So when you have an agency like that and we have the evidence, the media is going to be like, Trump's trying to stop aid, when in reality, I think we can see, well, somebody's got to finally fix these government budgets and do something because these aren't really working, right? I mean, am I the only person who sees this?
No, the problem is, though, the headlines that get to be created out of his budget cuts and stuff like that are too good for the politically uninformed. They'll read it and they will take it as fact without understanding the deeper process behind why the cuts are coming.
I mean, I feel like that's going to be the situation just broadly when it comes to the average person that isn't consuming political content regularly. Like, so it's my sense that your average normie that isn't really read into politics probably spends about 30 minutes to an hour per week on their political information, right? These are the people that have lives, they have kids, they have jobs, and they'll catch a couple things that they hear on TV or on the internet somehow. Maybe they have an X account, but if they have an X account, it's unlikely that they're not really read in at all. So they get their information half from the morning, local news and half from The View, which means they're mostly uninformed.
Or it's like when Bill Burr talks about, when he talks about, well, I think it was handled just fine. And what you're saying is there's a difference between government mismanagement and firefighters doing their best with the limited resources they had to fight the fires. Now, the average person who's not paying close attention is going to assume that he means both, but we understand that he is just uninformed and doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I think the larger issue at hand when it comes to FEMA is that what Americans really want is effective emergency disaster relief whenever and wherever it happens. And what we're looking for is the most effective way to deal with it. I think Ron DeSantis proved over and over again that the state was more effective in handling it than on the state level rather than the federal level was more effective. If Trump's going to move forward with abolishing FEMA, so long as I think he redirects those funds to the states who should have a better handling and understanding of what's going on in the state than the federal government does, is the right way to go. But at the end of the day, that's what the American people want. Yes. They want effective disaster relief. They want fire departments that promote and hire people based on meritocracy, not based on some LGBT or DEI stuff. I think the LA...
You saw that, right?
LA
that was
police,
crazy.
Not police department, the fire department had the top 3 people there were all lesbians, and there's a short video of one...
Hold on. The points that you're making about Ron DeSantis and the states handling it, that's really going to depend on who's in charge of the state. Because if you look at the way that, LA and California have been governed, it's an absolute disaster. It's a disaster just as bad as the fire.
Well, they're set up to get help from the government.
Hold on. Ron DeSantis is the most competent, at least as far as anyone can tell, is the most competent governor in the United States. Whether you're talking about his management of emergencies, or you're talking about the way that they run elections and stuff, Florida is really the exemplary state in the U.S.
Can I put a caveat on that? I'm not going to correct you, but I think what's important for this, because we sometimes can forget that, being from New York, I think you are. I'm from L.A. I now live in Florida, but these are a little bit of like elitist bubbles, especially depending on the region. The reason why I believe we think that DeSantis is the best governor is because he's kind of like one of the only good significant governors. And this sounds so dismissive of the rest of the countries, but when you have states that are as large as Florida, as California, as New York, with these highly populated, metropolitan centers, the ability for corruption, Chicago, right, and Illinois to be there is pretty much unavoidable.
Well, it's a guarantee, but
right. But I'm saying it's unavoidable. And so it's almost like it's an anomaly, and we just haven't seen it. And I think that there probably are equally adequate governors in smaller states.
Articulate that differently. Are you saying that Florida is an anomaly because it isn't as corrupt as other...
It's an anomaly because of the size that it is and the amount of money and the size of its economy. Because it's the size of an average nation around the world, and yet it operates strategically and in such a way that we do not see such widespread corruption that does not benefit the average people, meaning there's no property tax, yet at the same time it's managed much better than Texas. I have a business in Texas. The roads there are terrible. Florida, they're not horrible. You can't get anywhere here because of the traffic, but that's another story. But I think and I mean this as praise for DeSantis, not a critique. I think there are some very, very, very wonderful and amazing governors. I mean, Kristi Noem has apparently managed her state well, but really is South Dakota something that
people in South Dakota.
Right? Can we really compare the skill set and the corroboration it takes with lateral movement to manage South Dakota? I'm not saying I could do it. I'm just saying we look at DeSantis, and that's to show you that our leaders are capable. And I want to say this to not just governors. He's at a federal level responsibility that when you're managing 20, 30 million, 40 million people, it can be done. And so when we look at Chicago, when we look at Houston, when we look at Dallas, when we look at LA, when we look at New York, what the hell are you doing? Because South Metropolitan Miami-Dade area, I mean, some parts of it, thanks to some of the recent migration, are pretty problematic. But overall, the state is functioning pretty damn well. And I feel like, to me, it just makes me think how much corruption is going on and exactly where is the problem. Because if it can be done there, there's no damn reason why it shouldn't be able to be done somewhere else.
I think that was the point that I was making.
It's just caveating you, onto it.
I think, I mean, obviously, I totally agree with you. I think that Florida is the best run state in the U.S., at least to an outsider, as far as I can tell. And I do think that the people that are running it matters. I think that you're not going to get that out of Illinois. You're not going to get that with Chicago with the people that they elect. their mayor is not is completely captured by the whole leftist ideology, and as long as that's the situation, you can't help but run into corruption and all sorts of problems from the state. So as much as I do agree with you a lot, but I think that it's exemplary of the people.
So I was thinking about how in Bush's second term, right, a lot of people said that Katrina was a huge downfall to him, right? Is that even, like, if you get rid of FEMA and you take your emergency management organization money and you push it to the states, does that actually take some of the heat off a president on the federal side if it's then done exclusively through the state, even if the money is coming from the federal level down?
I mean, I'd argue
because there's no organization to link it back to him.
The idea is that the state would be able to more effectively deal with the disaster. But I feel as though some states are more prepared on purpose and other states aren't on purpose because they know the federal funding would be coming on the other side is one of the issues here. One of the things, too, as far as the governors go, I think there are half decent. I don't know. Is it kosher to say here on here? There are half decent Democrat governors. I think some of us tend to stay in a bubble and we're willing to overlook them. So, for example, in Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, I think makes an effective governor. And in the same way how Governor Ron DeSantis was able to repair bridges after whatever disaster, I think on the I-95 collapse, Josh Shapiro was also able to quickly move to fix that disaster.
I-95?
Yeah, there was a big bridge collapse on I-95.
That was in Maryland.
More than a few people.
Was in Maryland.
I thought, wait, are you talking about during the hurricane or what?
No, there was like also in Pennsylvania, there was like an oil tanker that hit like a bridge.
Maryland.
That was in Maryland?
That was in Maryland,
right?
yeah.
He's so good.
95
There's something about bridges
doesn't
and Josh
go,
Shapiro.
95 doesn't go through.
Isn't that Baltimore?
Yeah, it was in Baltimore. That's
remember that? Yeah, the DEI mayor.
Yeah,
he forgot to get his.
So there was I'm reading it now. There's a collapsed bridge in Pennsylvania that he was able to quickly and effectively build back up by skirting different regulations and like making people work.
More than a few people here, especially, have said that it was insane that they chose Tim Walz to run. I guess we found out later that Shapiro didn't want anything to do with it, and I think that's because they understood
no, you'll kill
that
my
because
political aspirations.
Shapiro,
Smart.
That Shapiro was a more effective candidate, and that was why it was so surprising that they didn't choose him.
Yeah. All right, so let's go on to this next story here. We're gonna hold on. Give me this. Are you
gonna get the new shirt? The Trump?
State Department issues immediate widespread pause on foreign aid from Politico. The stop work orders appear to apply to U.S. aid for all countries except for Israel and Egypt. This ought to be great. Secretary of State Marco Rubio halted spending Friday on most existing foreign aid grants for 90 days. The order, which shocked State Department officials, appears to apply to funding for military assistance to Ukraine, which I think is a positive. Rubio's guidance issued to all diplomatic and consular posts requires department staffers to issue stop work orders on nearly all existing foreign assistance awards, according to the document, which was obtained by Politico. It is effective immediately. It appears to go further than President Donald Trump's recent executive order, which instructed the department to pause foreign aid grants for 90 days, pending review by the secretary. It had not been clear from the president's order if it would affect already appropriated funds or Ukraine aid. What do you guys think about stopping foreign aid? Personally, I love the idea of ending all foreign aid because just like I think that when you give individuals money, you turn them into wards of the state and you make them dependent on the state. I think when you give other countries foreign aid, I think that it does make them dependent on the United States. I will say the one I think positive argument about foreign aid is when you have as much stupid debt as the United States does and you give foreign countries dollars, that incentivizes them to spend the dollars and use the dollars, meaning that your currency is going to be propped up by that as opposed to people stop using it. If they have the money and it's valuable or they see value in it, they're going to spend it, and that's good for the propping up the dollar. Now, that's not saying that I like the idea of foreign aid. I think that it's a net negative, but at least I want to talk about some of the arguments that people would consider a pro. But what are we thinking here? Is there anybody here? Alad, what do you think about foreign aid, man?
I think foreign aid is an important foreign policy that we have in our country. Having said that, I think for way too long, American foreign aid has been taken for granted and been taken advantage of by other countries. And every single, all foreign aid that we are giving out to people does need to be reevaluated for how important and useful it is to advance American policy objectives around the world.
That's a good question. I mean, look, the stopping the foreign aid thing, it's always going to come with an exception, right? And I think right now there's 3 countries that are, am I incorrect that it's still 3 countries that are an exception?
Egypt and Israel.
It was Egypt and
I know
Jordan.
it's Egypt, Jordan, and Israel, right?
But I think that
Which is all just saying Israel.
So I heard this story the other day, I think it was 2 or 3 days ago, and I don't know, and this particular piece that CNN is reporting, or Politico is reporting here, this is actually new today. So last I heard it was Egypt, Jordan, and Israel. I don't know if it's still Jordan. I think that there's an update because it said that the proposal was from Trump originally, and then what Marco Rubio did actually goes further than what Trump was talking about. But go ahead. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, yeah. Look, and these things could be changing live as we go. I mean, there's a bridge that collapsed in Pennsylvania, a bridge that collapsed in Maryland. The point is, it's kind of sad that the state of our infrastructure, the bridges are collapsing, right? And there's more than one, and then that's the issue. So with something like this too, it feels kind of similar. It's like, okay, well, Egypt and Israel, let's be honest, it's the same foreign aid package if you really look at our objectives. Some people could argue in favor of that, right? Could say, well, I mean, this is where we're objectively giving to an ally. I mean, obviously, I would probably, be on the other side of the camp, and I would disagree that this is an ally. I think allies don't just take, that they give back a lot, particularly in your times of need. But we don't see a lot of the two-way giving in the way I'd like to see, per se. So, I mean, I understand that a lot of people are really sold out for Israel, either spiritually. I know that there's a lot of people that are captured, ideologically outside of, people blame AIPAC for everything. Some people are just Protestant Christians, which I think people really dismiss in this country. And I understand that it's probably really easy to keep the money flowing there. There's so much political lobbying. I mean, Israel pays too much money to politically lobby to give up their foreign aid. So to me, I still think this is a win. I know people are going to hate me for this, but it's like, look, if we even got the political lobbying cornered enough with Qatar and other nations that we were able to melt down our foreign aid down to at least 2 countries. Am I happy with it? Is it perfect? But this is my opinion on the people that are constantly negative about this Trump administration. Yeah, Trump's a Zionist. He's open about it. And he's not going to stop supporting Israel. And if you thought you were voting for him and that's what he's going to do, he's not. He's also not bringing about the Fourth Reich. And he's not a white nationalist, and he's not a white supremacist, and he's not a national socialist. He's a centrist. And he said during his inauguration that he's bringing about colorblind meritocracy. It's the most fence-sitting, bullshit that you could possibly say if you were trying to be right-wing. He's like, he's still
a 90s Democrat.
Well, yeah, he's just a moderate guy. But unfortunately for us, it's like, things have gone so far left that even just pulling towards some common sense, I'm going to say, as someone who would be considered staunchly right, I still celebrate the win towards the center. And so even if I could sit here and say, yeah, I'm not happy that we're still giving $5-6 billion to these countries who are politically lobbying us, and it shows you we don't have full control of our government. The fact if we can even get the fire contained 30 or 40%, I don't want to be one of those guys that's just, this isn't a win because we didn't get all of our countries.
So yeah, I'm of the mindset that is, if any money that the government doesn't spend is a victory, because the government is always not just spending money, it's always increasing spending. I think it's a big win because of the fact that we are not giving money to Ukraine, that's been the biggest consumer of American foreign aid for the past 2 years, definitely. I'd love to see foreign aid stopped going to Israel and to Jordan and to Egypt and all. Like I said, I'm just overall, I think that foreign aid is a net negative.
When it comes to foreign aid, I do think we're missing a little bit of the forest for the trees, I think is the saying, because beyond America supporting other countries financially and sending arms, we run the world economy, and the backbone of the world economy is based off of Americans' ability to police the seas and allow free trade to occur. So if Americans weren't willing to subsidize free trade globally, it wouldn't exist and the world system would collapse. We have troops all throughout Asia right now that act in a way of foreign aid. And people often ask, why? Why do we have this foreign policy of trying to support many of these other nations? It's because if we didn't, then the world order would look completely different. If the American military wasn't there to help support South Koreans now with troops stationed there would likely be war to continue there. If we don't send money to Egypt, the Egyptian government would likely collapse. If we don't continue to support NATO, which people tend to overlook, then Russia will definitely encroach more on Eastern Europe. So How do I know that?
And I said, I don't know that I believe that. I think they'd go after Ukraine, but I don't know that they're looking.
So I think there's a reason that other countries like Finland and Sweden, I believe, decided to join NATO after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I think Russian ambitions in Eastern Europe are obvious and clear.
There's like NATO lobbyists and expansionists who like have this other.
I think it's within our interest to help prop up the American world order that we continue to benefit from.
Is it Switzerland changing a centuries old, dogma and suddenly supporting Ukraine in a conflict? I mean, that doesn't.
Why do you
strike
think Finland joined NATO?
That isn't. Why do? Okay, well, first of all,
Switzerland actually is supporting Ukraine.
Switzerland got out of neutrality. NATO. Well, they got out of neutrality on Ukraine. Yeah, and I'm not going to go to the details. You can look that up, but in terms of like their idea of like their support, they were vocal. There was politicians. It completely broke composure. That threw me off too. When like Swiss politicians. It threw me off. I don't know if Switzerland ended up ever giving arms, or they ended up. Did they?
They both joined NATO, but why do you think
so
these
they ended
countries?
Up siding with Ukraine.
Why do you think these countries are feeling compelled to join NATO?
Okay, that is a very long, very short and simple. I think that there is, just like we have AIPAC lobbying in our government, I think there's NATO lobbying. I think this has to do with unification and military expansionism in the military-industrial complex. The more NATO countries that they lobby to get in, then they have to buy the weapons from our military-industrial complex companies. This is about continuing the war machine. I don't think it's because Finland wanted to or was better off, and I don't think Switzerland was better off.
I think it's better off for Finland's defense.
I think they're in greater danger.
Obviously.
I think being a neutral border country would create actually more strength for them, because Finland could then, in many ways, play both allies to both countries and say, well, we're net neutral, we'll buy from both, and they might be able to negotiate for cheap gas. You have countries competing to bring sovereignty into the nation and to give them all the resources they want at an exchange rate that would be beneficial to the people. I'm just saying, I don't think certain countries joining NATO is beneficial, and particularly, I don't think NATO is beneficial to the United States, considering how little people pay for their own protection.
I think you talk about a lot of these things very ominously because you're missing like the most obvious answer to these questions. So why would Finland want to join NATO and have access to the best weapons on Earth to help deter a potential future invasion? That's why these countries want to join NATO, because they feel threatened and they know that NATO is one of the most powerful defensive.
Ukraine's not NATO.
Well, no,
they're getting
not,
a lot of money.
They wanted to be.
They wanted to be.
I know, but they didn't, and they're still getting the weapons. So what does that tell the rest of people? You don't have to join NATO to get protected.
You want access to the best weapons on planet Earth and the guarantee from the United States that they'll defend you because you were scared of countries invading you. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Why would you be afraid if you were neutral and had good foreign
relations?
Why are you
afraid? Because Russia is very bellicose in invading its neighboring countries.
Maybe because they're cozying up and the government is becoming radicalized towards a pro-NATO, not even a pro-West, because the West doesn't need NATO in its current form. In fact, it's been radicalized. We've continually violated our pacts. We're expansionists, and we've actually been provoking Russia.
We're expansionists, but Russia is invading Ukraine. But is Russia expansionist?
Okay, the U.S. we never even invaded Iraq or Afghanistan.
No, we weren't trying to expand our country in that way. But Elijah, no, I'm trying to understand. Do you believe that Russia is an expansionist? Do you think Putin has expansionist ambitions in Ukraine?
I think it's unification. I don't think it's expansionism.
I think it's unification.
Yeah, I do.
It's outrageous.
I do. I believe that.
I mean,
I believe
so
that
you don't believe in any of the sovereignty of Ukraine, or
I do not believe in Eastern Ukraine sovereignty. No.
Eastern Ukraine sovereignty.
Yeah. I don't believe so.
So not the Donbass. What part of Ukraine is sovereign? Not Crimea, not Donbass, but what about the rest of it? West Ukraine, if you will.
Well,
not that I've ever heard such a term.
I mean, I'm not a geopolitical. I'm not deciding the borders of the countries, but I do know the Russian ethnic people who already decided or voted to secede and to join Russia, and also to give themselves Russian passports. I think they have the right to secede and join Russia. So I do believe, especially with all the shelling.
Do they have the right to
Ukraine,
join NATO if that's what they want to do?
Do they have the right? Why would you ask me if I have?
Because you're saying they could. You're saying the people in the Donbass or what have you have the right to say that if they want to be a part of Russia,
everyone has the right to do whatever the hell they want.
If the Ukrainians vote to join NATO, do you think they should be able to join NATO?
If they want to, they should be able to. If the U.S. is paying for NATO, I don't believe the U.S. should allow them. But you asked me if they should be allowed to. If they want to, they should be allowed to want to join. I can't stop Ukraine, but I think the U.S. should block Ukrainians from joining NATO. They should have. I think we could have avoided this war if we had been stricter in demilitarizing and actually trying to lower tensions. This war was avoidable. I also think Putin
that's so naive. You want to demilitarize Ukraine, and that's going to stop Russia from invading.
No, but I do think Putin was dumb as well.
It's the most backwards way to think of it.
No, it's not though. It's not. If you look at the expansion of NATO, I do believe this current conflict, especially when you talk about the U.S. literally waging a coup inside of Ukraine, about about 11 years ago now about, and then also with the annexation of Crimea, this has been cooking for, this is a war that's been going on for over 10 years. It escalated with an invasion into what Ukraine calls sovereign territory, but what Russia sees as its own and its own citizenry. It's not a black and white picture. I don't think there's anything, I couldn't say wrong. Like, I have no authority. It's like, well, what do you think? Finland can't want to be NATO? Dude, I'm not Finnish. I have no.
We're the leaders of NATO,
clue.
so I mean.
No, I know. I have no freaking clue. I don't live in Finland. I don't know what their domestic and internal problems are, and why they would want to. I know why other countries, or why we've expanded. I know what lobbying happened from the military-industrial complex to try to convince and lobby politicians so that they would be able to buy our weapons to keep our imports and our exports up on our weaponry, because they have to buy our weapons and NATO-approved weaponry. I know that, and I'm saying I don't believe that the expansion of NATO was really about protecting Europe. I do think it was about money and power.
Alad, do you think that Ukraine should be allowed to join NATO?
I think if Ukraine was in NATO, Russia would not have attacked.
That's not what I asked. Do you think that Ukraine should be allowed to join NATO?
At this point, no, because they're in a conflict, and you need to settle all your border disputes if you want to be a part of NATO.
You think that they should have been allowed to join before Russia invaded? And by Russia invaded, I mean after the 2014 election shenanigans and
so I think
stuff.
because of the election shenanigans is when Putin sent the famous little green men.
Yes.
And that's what they had a border dispute following that.
Yeah.
And if you have a border dispute and have an open conflict going on, we don't want to bring you in because we don't want to be dragged into that.
So then prior to that, do you think they should have been allowed to join Ukraine? So say that in the 90s when Russia, when it was like, look, we got to get these nukes out of Ukraine. And the United States made agreements that said we'll protect you from Russia if you give up the nukes. Do you think they should have been allowed to join NATO then?
There were some other stipulations, like the issue of corruption and different things like that. But yeah, I think it would be a good thing. And if they met, I think now Trump wants it to be like 5% of GDP. Yeah, I think they would have made a great ally.
Really?
Just like how Poland is one of the best NATO allies currently. They contribute something like 4.8% of GDP to military spending, and they help contribute to making NATO such a powerful force. And you'll actually notice the further east you go with NATO allies, you'll see them spending a higher percent of GDP on military. And why all of this is, we don't need to put our heads in the sand and we pretend we don't know what's going on. They're all more nervous about a Russian invasion as opposed to
Are you
the
neocon
French.
adjacent? I'm not reading that as an insult. Are you neocon adjacent?
Neocon adjacent? What is a neocon? I believe in peace through strength.
That's okay. That's all.
Sure.
That's yeah.
And I believe Trump believes the same thing. And Trump is encouraging NATO countries to increase to 5% of GDP spending.
That's a very broad statement.
No, increase military spending. Cutting
but
clear.
where and with who? Right? Who's increasing that spending?
To our NATO allies, to our Asian allies, to our Israeli allies.
But it's like no. But I think Trump is a nationalist, and and I think that he's actually no. I don't think he's. I think what Trump actually is doing, he's actually tried to modernize our own military. So he's actually come home first. And from what I've seen, is saying he came in his first administration, realized that not only was Air Force One outdated, that we have a new one coming in 2020 or 2030. The protection and the military. I think it's technically considered an Air Force, right? A property of the military. So that was outdated. We have a new one coming out. It still won't be finished until he's out of this term. So he's looking at future positions. Mm-hmm. He's getting the military set up for the future here. Not only that, he's helped modernize the Navy. We know he started the Space Force. My only derision or difference with you is I do believe that the American military machine has gotten too greedy. And I do believe that there are multiple aspects. And maybe this is where you and I might agree more, because I don't think you're a very pro-war individual. And a little my libertarian anti-war Scott Horton side comes out. But I do believe that the military-industrial complex is very sneaky, and it's not just by waging endless wars in Iraq or Afghanistan that we have weaponry that we leave behind. I think adding NATO members has been a crucial and vital part of, just like the EU needed to add new members to keep its bureaucracy running, or the USCIS immigration in our country needs to increase immigration because they increase fees, and now it's completely run through paperwork fees. Like, a lot of the bureaucracy and the back end are run by expansionism, and sometimes we need to realize, it's not always so maniacal and malevolent and evil. Sometimes it's about money.
I want to chime in here. It's my sense that the future of the military-industrial complex is going to be less, and I think the Ukraine war kind of exemplifies this. It's going to be less about tanks and bombs and stuff, and more about intel. And I think that in the next 30 years, Lockheed Martin's not going to be as important as Google is. I think that the tech companies and the AI companies that you see, I think NVIDIA is going to be more important.
So U.S. based companies?
Well, I mean, I would like to see them be U.S. based companies, but yes, I do think that tech companies are going to actually be where the frontier of the military industrial complex, because as AI becomes more and more important, and as robotics becomes more and more important, you're going to see less reliance on manned systems. You're going to see less reliance on conventional forces.
But that seems to be the way in which the military-industrial complex has captured at least the former anti-war left, who talk about, when you talk about where the spending is going, they try to point out that the weapons are being made here in America, so American wages are being paid for it. Well, which is, we know, is really just a Trojan horse to allow you to make more arms and sell more weapons overseas.
Elijah, I just wanted to follow up, because I think big picture where we disagree is that I believe in American values and American hegemony worldwide. And I think it's important to stand for those values and support our allies worldwide, and not cede any room to the Chinese in the Pacific, or the Persians in the Middle East, or the Russians' irredentist dreams in Eastern Europe. So I think that's the bigger picture idea of where we disagree, because if we do pull back in NATO, if we do pull back from the Pacific, if we don't want to continue supporting our allies in the Middle East, we are only ceding ground to our enemies who have the opposite values that we do here in America.
I do agree that the United States is in a position where the more the U.S. pulls back, the more it will create a vacuum, and the more that will be filled by other countries. We were talking earlier, and whereas I don't think that, I don't want the U.S. to go and start any kind of other wars or anything like that, but the U.S., if the U.S. does, shrink its role in the world, that's going to have a corresponding effect on the dollar, and it's going to have a corresponding effect on the influence that the United States has. And I don't think the American people really want that. I think, again, Joe Sixpack, or whatever you want to say, the average person that isn't politically, dialed in, they don't want to see a significant change in their life. And I think that the average person is completely unprepared for the kind of changes that they would see if the U.S. did become less of the global hegemon. So now, whether or not you think the U.S. is a force for good or force for bad is actually neither here nor there. It's just that when the U.S. stops being the global hegemon, that makes a massive change in the whole world. Hold on,
the problem
it makes a massive change in the whole world, and I don't think that the average person has really thought through the ramifications in their daily life to that kind of change.
Well, the other problem is that when they see the way that disasters happen in America and there's no help for American citizens, they're not thinking 5 steps ahead. They're saying, why are you spending trillions of dollars, billions of dollars overseas when you don't even have the money to help us here? And they're not thinking about all of those steps and what it means to be a global power. And
that actually speaks to my exact point. The average American doesn't even understand how things are funded. People think, I pay taxes to pay for things.
But this is everywhere, though.
Yeah, but people don't think. People think I pay taxes so that way the government has money to pay for things, and that's not how it works anymore. When the government wants to fund something, the government wants to make bombs, the government wants to fund a program, whatever, they print the money. They use taxation and they use interest rates to control the dollar supply, the amount of dollars that are out there. But if they want to do something, they don't need to tax you for it. Your taxes aren't going to go up, so that way they can afford to do things. That's not how our economy works.
But I mean, it's still bankrupting your kids. It's still putting your kids' future in danger, because they're also going to be taxed at an endless rate. Yeah, but we're never going to get out of debt.
Okay, sure.
Foreign aid is not what's bankrupting America. By the way, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security is what's bankrupting Americans. So no, I love how we always love to point the finger and we say, oh, foreign aid, and that's why we can't help the homeless people, and that's why people are starving in the middle of God knows where.
You're 100% right. It's mandatory spending, the discretionary spending, things like the military and whatnot.
Pennies on the dollar.
Those things are not important. If you actually are worried about the United States debt and the value of the dollar and stuff, you have to address mandatory spending. You have to address Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Those are the things that are actually driving the debt. Everything else is tertiary. As much so that does speak to what we're talking about here. The foreign aid stuff, the conversation that we're having is great. I love the idea of getting rid of foreign aid, but it does not matter about the debt. There's no one's going to be like, oh, the debt's going to explode because we give so much money to Israel. We give Israel pennies compared to what really drives our.
Nothing will change if we stop giving foreign aid. Nothing will change for you domestically.
But
nothing at all.
Here's where foreign aid is different. This is from the outside looking in. I've lived all over and worked all over the world, right? From South Korea to China to Australia. I've been around there, and one thing that I've noticed working and living out of another Western country, even though I don't live there anymore or work there, is that in Australia, it's a superpower, right?
No.
And it is a superpower.
It's a colony of ours.
No, it is.
It's a colony of
stop.
ours.
No,
and if we didn't help protect them, China would take them over.
All right. Okay. Elon, I'm glad that you are able. I'm glad you're more. I'm glad you're smarter than the entire.
It's early.
Five
Your
Eyes.
Australian friends are still asleep.
Yeah. I'm sorry that you don't understand the Five Eyes and the intelligence and the fact of what happens in the world there. Okay, so
don't say Five Eyes.
It literally is. It literally is a superpower because the world is not really the world. It's broken up into regions, and in that region, basically the Western dominance is really set down to two major countries. You could look at Japan as one, but really South Korea and Australia to control what's going on in the South China Sea, as they would call it, or just call it, the Pacific. But the point of the matter is that Australia, like you said, people don't think about where their money goes. Over there, everybody's like, we have healthcare and we have this and we have that. And you're like, yeah, well, it's because you have the luxury of the United States is propping up your failed military, which their military is so failed, by the way, that they're planning on letting non-citizens join their military ranks. It's actually gotten that bad. And it's so bad that right now, one of the most contradictory or controversial ideas in the country, the U.S. is saying, hey, I think this actually might have started under Trump. You need to actually buy your own nuclear subs to deter China. We're not going to fund and patrol your waters anymore. So they're going to be $34 billion. And everyone in Australia was freaking out, right? Because they're used to their money not going towards buying nuclear subs. I'm laughing as an American there because I'm like, you're mad that you're spending $34 billion on subs? Wait till you find out what we spend on our subs every year. You guys keep saying, oh, we get healthcare, but our healthcare system's falling apart. I'm like, welcome to being an American that you make fun of so much and say, well, you guys buy bombs and we have healthcare. Well, eventually, you're going to need to buy your own bombs. And it's either now or never because we cannot patrol the whole world. We cannot control. If you really want to be a superpower and you want to be an ally, like how Israel's an ally, you got to give back. It's not just against Israel. It's like you got to give back because even though we're not giving $3 billion in aid, let's say, to Australia, the amount of military support that we give to patrolling and protecting their northern border is in probably way more than what we give Israel.
Where are they buying these submarines from?
From the United States.
And is the military-industrial complex here a good thing or a bad thing?
Oh, that's a dumb question.
Is it a good thing that they're getting the submarines or not? That they have the ability to buy those nuclear submarines?
Is it good that they have the ability? Sure.
It's a good thing. Okay.
Yeah, sure. I wish that they had the ability to create their own if they really are considered an ally.
They want to have a qualitative military edge over other countries. Then you have to buy.
Well, they've let their edge fall like many Western countries.
They wouldn't be able to compete otherwise.
Yes,
no, not
everyone's been relying on the U.S. for decades. That people have not been developing their own weaponry.
We have the best arms industry, and it's
correct.
It's a good thing that our allies continue to buy from us, just like you were talking about earlier, how we have Five Eyes. I think it's an important thing that we continue to collaborate with our allies abroad to help buy these submarines. And I'm sure, by the way, the U.S. is subsidizing those submarines.
Okay, yeah, all I was trying to say is the reason why I'm saying what's happening in the world today with foreign aid, since we're talking about this, it's easy to look at foreign aid as just the dollars that we send in, numbers on a screen we're transferring. But how many years, have we been protecting New Zealand and Australia? Actually, it's about time that we do cut back on our foreign aid to these countries and say, look, you guys make trillions of dollars in GDP, you can build some damn submarines.
I mean, I don't know that I'm particularly concerned with the shipworks of New Zealand and Australia. I don't have a problem.
I am, because we need to control that for trade. Like U.S. has interest in controlling Pacific.
The United States is the country that patrols the seas. The United States makes all the oceans safe for international trade, right? So it's not something that it's not a situation that we share. I don't have the numbers, but all you got to do is Google like the United States Navy compared to every other Navy in the world. Every other Navy would be destroyed in a moment if the United States wanted to.
We have something like a dozen nuclear submarines that no other country truly has. Maybe Japan has one or two. But
all what we know about too.
The amount of power that the United States has when it comes to the Navy is mind-boggling. And the United States does make trade safe. And I think that as much as the United States is going to be, we're going to be imperfect and there's going to be corruption and stuff, I'd rather the United States be the country that's making sure that the seas are open for trade than China or than Russia, because I just don't trust that China or Russia would deal even close to as fairly as the United States.
I think you're correct on that. 100%.
I don't think the United States deals fairly. I'm sure that there are countries that feel like they're getting, the crap end of the stick and stuff like that when they're dealing with the U.S. I'm sure that's the case. But at the end of the day, I think the United States is the most fair of the options out there. So, I mean, I don't think that it's a bad thing that, honestly, the foreign aid when it comes to military aid and stuff like that, it's the U.S. having Americans build military weaponry for other countries. So essentially, the U.S. is just paying Americans
stimulus
that build
to American arms companies.
And again, now you can be against these kind of things and stuff, that's fine, but it's not the same thing as handing out bags of cash. We're not sending pallets of cash to Australia and New Zealand like we
just
did
put our largest CIA operative headquarters base right in Australia, which is essentially a U.S. Controlled extension of our dominance. Although all this being said and done, I just thought it'd be a time to remind you guys of how much we're all collectively frustrated at this table with the West Virginian local politics of sole proprietorships and business. And I've been here for a day, and I gotta get the hell out of here because I can't handle it.
Let's go. I can't tell
let's go.
The beanie and the complaining.
Let's go to
about
this
West Virginian business law.
Let's go on to enough. Let's go on to this story. Target is the latest company to roll back some DEI programs because Donald Trump is a Nazi. Not really. That last part I made up. CNN reports New York. Target is joining a wave of U.S. companies pulling back on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives as right-wing, that's a scare word there, right-wing pressure leads companies to alter their commitment to hiring diverse candidates and expanding access. Everyone knows that is as much crap as you can jam into one opening sentence as imaginable.
Well, any profit-seeking entity was looking to do this anyways. This just gave them the excuse to finally be able to do it and put the blame on someone else.
And CNN gets to call
exactly
the orange man bad for doing it. Target said in a statement Friday that it will end its 3-year diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. In 2022, the company said that those goals included ensuring equitable access to career advancement and equitable business decisions that increase relevance with diverse guests and support economic inclusivity. Target had also committed in 2020 to expand black representation at the company by 20%. I think we all around this table probably agree that these are terrible ideas because you're not hiring for competency, you're hiring based on skin color, and that's it's just straight up illegal in the United States. I mean, am I talking out of...
No, but the problem is now they talk about Trump's rolling back civil rights. Now people think of it in the opposite effect now.
Say it again?
Now, because they're talking about Trump rolling back civil rights because he's getting rid of these programs, they don't understand that's not what that is. So he's actually getting the blame despite the fact that what they were doing with these programs was already illegal.
But again, I think that person that you're the hypothetical person you're talking about is the person that watches, maybe 30 minutes to an hour of Jimmy Kimmel a week, and that's where they get their, they get their news from. which honestly is a terrible, terrible development. When you have people like Jimmy Kimmel that are the people that are giving the news to Americans.
The View.
The View is worse. I absolutely worse, but only marginally. But
there's also a lot of guilt by association in Americans who they see something like this and they say, yeah, I do come from a privileged background. Now, whether they do or they don't, or whether this other guy on the other side of the table has the same access as them, doesn't matter to them. So they don't see a problem in stuff like this, especially NIMBY white liberals out in the suburbs. They're not going to see a problem with programs like this.
You think the NIMBYs?
They're not in my backyards, because they're not in they're not worrying about jobs at Target.
I don't mean to minimize getting rid of these DEI programs.
Minimize them.
But I will minimize them in a second. It feels like the government, kind of winks and nods and gives directions to these companies for what they want to see. In the past administration, it was that Joe Biden wanted to see them do more DEI stuff, so they did the window dressing for the DEI stuff. Now they don't want to be targeted or try to get in the good graces of the Trump administration. So you see not only these guys, but some of the tech bros like Jeff Bezos at Amazon, or well, I guess he's not at Amazon anymore, do the same thing where they're trying to get rid of these DEI initiatives and get in the good graces of the conservative government.
So do you think that this is? Do you think that this?
It's virtue signaling.
So you think that they were looking to get rid of these programs anyways,
Yes.
and that the getting rid of them is actually a way for them to get into the good graces of
where they were already making cuts. So like if you actually go into it's really funny. If you go into a lot of these companies and you look at the demographics, they haven't become more diverse. When you look at upper level management in tech companies, you can check this out for most of the large ones. It's still upwards of like 90% East Asian, we're not even talking about South Indian, like East Asian, and predominantly white men who are running like core engineering, core development, especially the executive department level like teams. And then it'll look and it'll be like, well, 50% of the employees are basically brown, gay, or a combination of some sort of melanation. And the thing is that what happens is that these jobs are actually able to be cut fairly easily, and they don't want these jobs at their companies. They're bloat, and a lot of this stuff isn't needed. You ever watch the videos of these
that's
little,
exactly
like Asian girls going like, and I get a little soda at my office, and I type up a couple codes.
Oh, those are
Listen, your company knows your job is worthless too. And when the cuts came recently,
Adult
the
daycare.
profits aren't there. They do the cuts for them first. Like, wow, everyone. I love how people will be like, we're winning woke. Microsoft cut 20,000 jobs. You're like, bro, they've been waiting for I agree with Elon. They've been waiting to cut these 20,000 jobs because once they had the financial, excuse to tell the government, because at a certain level of a corporate, size, you have to have, the government does check in on your diversity quotas. It's unfortunate, but they do. You have to have evidence for why you made the cuts. And I just don't believe DEI is good for business. I believe it's annoying to people. And I do not think that the average consumer really wants to buy tucking underwear at Target or see gay flags while they're buying their coffee. Like I don't know anyone who cares outside of like maybe Portland.
This was the same thing that happened in Hollywood after the strikes, and they immediately started cutting jobs like that and sending work over to Canada, work over to India. The first thing that they do is like, look, we're like telling you, like, look, the strike is going to hurt you. You're going to get what you want on paper. And the first thing they're going to do is send your work elsewhere. And that's exactly what happened. They were just looking for an excuse.
Yeah, it's like I want to go to the store without experiencing Ian's graphene dream. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying. You know what I mean?
It's the laptop jobs. It's the same thing people have been talking about for years. They're basically the people who go to do that. The ones who work for Google are just influencers that are used to make propaganda videos to make look how good it is to work at Google. But everybody knows like when Elon bought Twitter and he cut like 80% of the workforce and the website still worked.
And you're referring to those TikToks that you saw.
Yeah, that's the whole point.
I'm going to work, and they'd essentially do like
a day in the life of Google.
10 minutes of work in the whole video, and they'd have 3 different
adult
meals.
daycare.
Can I ask you a question, Phil? This is I genuinely want to know this because I joked on the earlier show today. You said you're an anti-communist. I was like, oh, are you a fascist? I was just messing with you. I know you're not, because fascists are anti-communist, and I'm not a fascist either. But I do want to know a good question. I know fascism is becoming very popular, particularly among a certain amount of the right wing, and no one can deny that, right?
Can we define it?
Shlomo 666 Anon might be in the chat tonight. Telling me to deport Elon, and I will do it later. Don't worry, Shlomo. No, but this.
Don't worry, I got the Mossad's back.
Yeah,
or the CIA. Who knows?
I found Tim's matzah in the green room, so I know his Mossad agent is here somewhere. But
right across from you.
Yeah, I'm like.
He's
somewhere.
Pack handler.
No, but okay. So I understand, and honestly, I understand it, right? This coalition
there was a question.
Yeah, I'm asking you. No, I'm saying I understand this idea of fascism. People don't understand this alignment of sort of the private and the public sector. Mm-hmm. The reason why I understand this is because what we kind of are seeing right now is that the private sector does take direction from the public sector. And if Trump is saying we're going to be a certain way, then the private sector lines up. And right now us, or a lot of us in this room at least, like where Trump is taking things. So we like where the private sector is going. When Biden's in, we don't like where it's going. And so we don't like the private sector.
So this is
how much should we be fighting for government strength like this or government control? Because we do have a direct alignment of our private and public. Yeah. Where do we set the limit? And why is fascism then wrong? Like, you're anti-communism. Why is that wrong?
So the idea that the government aligns with private industry, that's undeniable. And it would be my preference that we have a government that's small enough where they really don't have any influence federally, at the very least. If there are states that want to say, okay, you're going to operate in our state, these are the rules that you have to operate in our state. And then these companies can decide, I don't want to. And you saw that with like Tesla leaving California, with Oracle leaving California. I think, Joe Rogan, even though he's not a gigantic company, he left California. And you see people deciding, I don't like dealing with the regulations or whatever. I've moved multiple times because I didn't like what was going on in my state. I grew up in Massachusetts. I didn't like it. I decided to move to New Hampshire. I have a place there. And so I think that when you can make your federal government, when you can actually have your federal government reined in and make it actually abide by the rules laid out in the Constitution, I don't think that the United States qualifies as fascist that way. Like if you actually, especially if we could have some kind of miracle and have an amendment that clarifies the necessary and proper clause and clarifies the commerce clause, so that way the government wasn't using that to basically bully every single industry that it just, well, not just the industry, but people as well. So I don't think the United States is intended to be fascist. I think the
are we kind of though a little bit like a fascist light?
It's because
well, I mean, I blame.
Listen.
Are we there?
In the first half of the 20th century, that was all the rage, right? Before the Nazis, before the horrors of what the Nazis did became public knowledge, before everybody really knew, Woodrow Wilson and the League of Nations and all of this stuff that was going on from World War I and after World War I, this was all the rage. And it was normal for people to think, well, the government should do this and the government should do that and et cetera, et cetera. That's when you get your FDRs and they have all of these policies and all these things that the government has built up. So personally, I'm the guy that wants to see the entire progressive agenda stripped away, right? And I go back to the way that the government was in 1900, because I don't want to see a big government. I want the smallest federal government that we can have. The states are empowered fully to do all sorts of things. And it's even in the Bill of Rights. The 10th Amendment says, look, if it's not listed here, then the states have the power. The Constitution is very clear. It is
you want to go back to our government when we were like the most racist and the most like hegemonic. It's like
I didn't
everyone
say
was like, I want our libertarians like, I want our government to get back to the point when we were all racist.
So stop putting words in my mouth.
I'm joking.
That's why I'm clarifying to stop putting words in my mouth.
But I'm saying I know what you mean. You're talking about that without the other stuff. But there is a lot of jokes about that. It's like maybe we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, right? Maybe in the terms of trying to progress past some faux pas or some issues in our society, we've sort of thrown out and gone too far.
The things that people think of when it comes to like the progress when it comes to like race stuff, right? So that's all in the 60s. All the stuff that really made the United States go from being a small government country to a big government country, that all happened long before the 60s, long before the Civil Rights
Depression, a lot of that stuff.
It was all stuff that actually did happen because of the Great Depression. And a lot of the things that we have now, they're vestiges of what was put in place to deal with what people would call excessive capitalism, or the way that capitalism behaves without regulations. I think that's totally wrong, especially nowadays when you have the ability to communicate as fast as we do and with the type of technology that we have. I think that the reins that you put onto private companies, I think those are completely unnecessary and they're antiquated and they don't need to be, they could be revisited and taken away without any significant problem. And if there was significant problem, word would get around so fast that companies wouldn't be. I mean, you're not just if you got rid of child labor laws, right? You're not going to have like kids in coal mines again. That's just not going to happen. It's just period, right? It's not going to happen if you got rid of you're not going to have kids.
Child labor is called Fortnite and subscription
Girl
gaming
Scout
services on their iPad. They sit there and just money for the company.
Be rolling in Girl Scout.
Yeah,
Elijah.
But so my opinion is, I think that the federal government should be as small as possible. I don't think that we need a large government that works hand in hand with companies.
Can I ask you how though? Because I only bring a juxtaposition here is like, because I'm not trying to actually put words in your mouth. You know me, I just troll and toy a little bit, but I mean this in like terms of we are a big government where a lot of people feel like we're either going to be communist or we're going to be fascist, and and I think a lot of the fascists are more like Christian nationalists. I'm saying, look, and I like your idea better. So like I do see everybody's ideas. I'm standing on the outside. I'm actually a dad, so I have 2 kids. People don't know, and I think when you have kids, it humbles the hell out of you because you have to think about how my decisions are going to affect their life, right? I know boomers are currently toasting their champagne in their jacuzzi that they bought on Afterpay, and kick their kids out at 18, enjoying their life. But some of us want our kids to be successful. But I mean, I look at my kids, I want them to be successful, and I'm thinking, okay, am I scoring points with a Christian Crusader 1488 on Twitter? That's not what I'm trying to do. Am I trying to get a job at the Daily Wire? Ben, I'll apologize. I'll take it. No, I didn't know. I'm not. I already put on a beanie. I'm ready. Come on, Ben. No, but I'm not. I'm just trying to be me with my family and figure out what's good for the country like we all are. We're clearly divided. we all have all these utopian ideas, but the truth is look, both of these sides that are pushing fascists and communists, to me, they got one thing right. We do have a pretty damn freaking big government. That government is in control of the means of production and in a lot of ways in influencing it. Now, where does that go? You want to nuke it and shrink it, but like, is that a reality? Like, is there any way to nuke it without a full self-implosion? Because it's like, and I don't know. I'm not a historian, but I've looked at empires, looked at the Roman Empire. Eventually, it puttered out. It broke into other empires, but it's like, are we being utopian, Phil? Are we just being boomers, out-of-touch boomer utopian people where we're just like, I just want a small government, while these young Gen Zs are all going communist? They're either going full communist or full fascist. What do they see that we don't see? And why don't they believe we can shrink the government?
What I think they see is the shortcomings of the liberal economic order, right? But the thing that they don't understand is that the shortcomings of the liberal economic order are actually not as big of a deal when they're put into the context of what came before, right? So nowadays you've got all kinds of problems with, like, we talk about the cost of living, the value of the dollar's gone down, the way that the boomers behaved about, essentially all of their 401ks, and kids can't buy homes, kids can't afford all kinds of things. And that's all real. And that's the reality that they're living in, but they don't have an experience with the things that were before the boomers. They don't have the experience with, like, the Great Depression. They don't have the experience without having the ability to just have food delivered on their apps, or all kinds of possible avenues to make revenue that the internet provides and stuff like that. So whereas I'm not saying that they're wrong, and I'm not saying that their struggles aren't real, I'm just saying that they are products of a time and a place, right? And you can't get outside of that context without experience. You can't just be like, if you're 20, 21, 22, 19, 20, 21, 22, and you're in the United States, that's all you've ever known. And you're not a bad person because that's all you've ever known.
You're not wrong that kids for the most part support these policies. The way these policies are framed is they're saying that Trump didn't roll back DEI. He rolled back protections for minority and marginalized groups. So by that nature, the whole point is that they're saying equal opportunity under the law, which is what it actually was before, which was beneficial to everyone, is now a bad thing. And they want to see the government, at least a lot of the young kids, the liberal kids, they like the idea that the federal government was willing to impose that because they feel that's a good thing. And that is a way towards communism, like you said.
Elijah, I wanted to follow up on what you were talking about a couple of minutes ago with fascism, or fascism light, that we're seeing in our upcoming generations. I want to ask, what do you think of I don't even necessarily mean this in a derogatory way. Do you believe the current Trump administration is fascistic?
No, I would say that the United States imperial system, like, it wouldn't matter who came into power, the overall totality of the size of our government and our power across the world is so big that corporate interests and government interests cannot be unlinked.
I think this is a misreading of fascism. I don't think
I didn't say we are. I said people say that we only have two directions to go. Like, either we make it fascist to get control of it, or we make it communist, but we're kind of like free floating.
Sure.
And it's a fight for who's.
I think that's an argument that a communist or fascist would say, that there's no other way that you have to go. That you could either be a communist or you're a fascist. It's the split in the road. But I don't really believe
kids are fascists.
No.
They are.
I think that extremist voices tend to be the loudest, but aren't the majority at all. And these
Polls
people
of
could
Gen Z show
these
that they
people could
lean
be
extreme.
an M online as much as they want, and I think they have different politics. But I don't think they're, as I understand, the fascistic tendencies is a complete consolidation of power in the government. I don't think we're as statist as you are implying. I don't think Trump's nearly as militaristic as you need to be for a fascist. He's not going to be a dictator. He's not staying in power.
You have to be a dictator to have a fascistic.
I don't even think he has consolidated power. So I think it's like a leftist reading almost of what.
I want to point out that the way that you not to stomp on what you're saying, but the questions that Elijah was asking, I didn't get the vibe that he was saying that Trump was going to be a fascist dictator. I do feel like it was coming from a place of, like, look, this is the way young people kind of view things, and he was looking for someone's opinion.
I'm just worried about I'm worried about some of this stuff, because I'm worried that we're becoming, like, around this table, just as out of touch when we make boomer memes, and it's like, and they're like, hey, you want to get a job? Just shake his hand firmly and then get a job.
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Even when they're like, go on LinkedIn, you're like, you just got to know someone now. That's all it is. You got to know someone and you got to be in the right place. Tell my kid, you want to work in politics? Go to political conferences. That's what you got to do.
Look, that's honestly, that's incredibly good advice, though, because whether you're talking about now or you're talking about 50 years ago or 100 years ago, like, I mean, I don't know how many people out there have read like Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Like, this is a book that salesmen and people used to read all the time, and it's full of the most obvious shit, right? It really is. But the point that it gets across is the most important part of getting a good job is who you know. So if you're sitting at home and you're on your computer all the time and you don't actually interact with anybody except from like an anonymous account on Twitter, like, that doesn't help any. If you go on X and you look at like people that tend to be on X a lot, one of the things that people say is meet your mutuals. Go and try to meet your mutuals, because when you actually make contact with other people, then you are going to be in a better position to get opportunities. And that there's also a phrase that you hear all the time, like 90% of the problem, or 90% of what you need to do is just show up. Right? If you go out and you get out into the world physically and you go do things with people and you're around people, opportunities are far more likely to arise than if you spend time at home. So, and again, this is not me saying that it's not hard for Gen Z or Gen Alpha or whatever. I'm not poo-pooing any of the struggles they say, but the culture today and the incentives, the way that the society is now, kids are not incentivized to go out into the world and do things with real people. And the more you get out and interact with real people doing real world things, the more opportunities are going to present themselves. And even if that means that you go and you meet your ex mutuals, go meet the people that you hang out with on Discord if you can. Go and do do
never
those.
meet your heroes, never meet your Discord.
No, it's
mod.
like meet your online friends is such a weird thing to hear, because it's never something I went through. It was never like, oh, let me meet my buddies from Twitter or my boy on the Discord server.
Man,
and it was just such a foreign, weird thing.
Yes,
for me.
I understand, but like, I mean,
What?
did you get your job here by sending an email, or did you know someone?
I knew somebody.
You got your job from sending an email? Okay, well, you knew someone.
Well, I was just social media.
I sent an email and said, hey, I know someone there.
Look,
I did send an email and it went unanswered. I sent multiple emails.
Well, listen, the reason that I got a record deal is because I knew someone. Right, I'm in a band that
And are talented and handsome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
okay,
it.
wait.
No, and honestly, when it comes to that, like, our first record was garbage and no one cared. I literally learned how to write songs well because I called up Adam D from Killswitch Engage and said, dude, I can write riffs all day. I can't put a song together. Will you produce our next record? He said, yes. I went there. We put out a record called This Darkened Heart. And then I said, okay, this one's doing okay. This seems to be helping. My buddy Scott Lee, who put on the New England Metal and Hardcore Fest for almost 20 years. He was a great friend of mine. We got to play those shows because I was good friends with Scott. Then we went back into the studio with Adam D and we did The Fall of Ideals. When The Fall of Ideals came out, that's what really opened it up for us. But that was because I knew people. And I appreciate that, I appreciate anyone that loves the music that All That Remains has made, but I showed up. I was at shows every weekend, whether my band was playing or not. There's something that you hear all the time when you're in the scene. Support the scene. Go to shows. If there's local bands playing, go watch the local bands. Part of that is showing up. So as much as again, I don't want to sound like I'm knocking kids today, because it's a totally different world and I'm not a kid. But I'm
grown ass men. Now, I hate that. It's like, I mean, they're like, what we think our kids are like. You meet them, they're like, oh, you're 21.
Look, you're a kid, okay? Compared to me, I should have my cane.
This guy's a father of two children.
He is.
Yeah, Brad Palumbo, that I guess I was born in 1980. I was
He's a youngin' too.
And I was like, damn, bro, that's crazy.
That hurts.
But I
just
just
hurt. I'm still
like I said. I want to point out. I want to drive this home. Like, get out and do things and meet people, because the world is about showing up.
So like, one of the things that I probably would say out of everything that I've done here is that I've never really taken the time. Like, a lot of very important people come through this company and I just never bothered. Like, unless it was a day when I was on the show, love it, love the job, love a lot of the people, but didn't take the time to be like, hey, my name's Brett, how's it going? And that's just me. I'm more introverted. That's just the way I am. But it is a shortcoming on my own point, because you're losing a lot of opportunities to put faces to names, to interact with people. And I am the person where literally this job, like Tim just sent me a message. So it wasn't knowing. It was the
you
opposite.
up, baby?
Yeah, it's like
like 2 a.m.
slid into my DMs. But that's the point, right? But that's the rare exception of that happening. Most of the time, the best opportunities come because you're like, look, okay, I need a job, and then you have friends who work in that sphere who you can call and say, look, is anybody hiring? Do you know anybody who's looking to put things together? It is not to be understated how important that is.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and go on to the next story, and we can dunk on Gavin Newsom a little bit. CNN is reporting Newsom and Trump face off from a distance as Los Angeles fires burn. Donald Trump has been giving Newsom the old Donald Trump at 2 a.m. tweeting treatment, and it's been pretty glorious. CNN is reporting advisors to California Governor Gavin Newsom spent the week monitoring new White House advanced staffers' social media accounts. See, he's just sending the mean tweets and changing the world, hoping for clues for where President Donald Trump might be headed when he lands in Los Angeles on Friday afternoon to talk about the wildfire damage. That's the state of relations as California and the federal government face one of the most expensive natural disasters ever and perhaps one of the most complex in American history. No one is talking between the Democratic governor's team and the newly inaugurated presidents. 2 people on the governor's team told CNN through a spokesman for the governor told CNN on Friday that he will head to the airport to greet Air Force One. Now, apparently, he did meet the president. Gavin Newsom did meet the president, and he was received fairly well, if I understand correctly. They shook hands, and they talked a little bit. Donald Trump has floated the idea of withholding aid based on, I believe, 2 conditions, one of them being voter ID in California, which it's an odd thing to connect to wildfire or to emergency relief, but I don't hate the idea of having California actually have to do voter ID. And what was the other one?
Pretty wild. I mean, I'm actually surprised at this one. This is pretty crazy.
What?
Just like, stipulating giving out aid during a crisis.
Sounds like a California conservative over here.
It just seems pretty crazy. I mean, obviously it's my home. I'm from LA, so it's like, things are pretty rough over there right now.
I'm going to strongly agree with you, and moreover, it's not only I think bad like morally for what the government should be doing there. I think it's just really poor politics. People forget that California is one of the biggest states that has the most Republicans in it, and to win the House, you need a lot of those seats. So there was actually one new rep from Republican rep from California, Young Kim, who said playing politics with people's livelihoods is unacceptable and a slap in the face to the Southern California wildfire victims. With a tight majority in the House, many seats were picked up in California, and this is not going to help them out with Republicans trying to stipulate aid. So I think it's
bad optics.
A bad move politically because they're going to lose some seats in a couple of years.
It can't be like, and I think this is where we need to draw the line. Like people obviously, I used to play a little more, not intentionally, to my side, just because I hadn't explored the political spectrum so much, right? It's like we're all on the spectrum, but to some extent. And I think, looking at it left and right is problematic. You kind of have to take individual issues and look at first what's humane. And I think that's a very, very increasingly rare thing. People just look at, in North Carolina, Republicans suffer. Who cares? I watched a TikTok of a girl saying that. She's like, I don't know if you other liberals understand that Republicans are enjoy that Los Angeles burned down because, we were all enjoyed when North Carolina got destroyed. And I'm like, no, you sick witch. Like, no, we didn't. We're not happy now. We weren't happy then. And quite frankly, there are plenty of right-leaning people that probably suffered in the LA fires and vice versa in North Carolina. So do not tell me that, this is a political storm, right? This isn't Q. We're not going into the storm here, okay? But I do think I understand Trump trying to play hardball with a state and with a governor, and I'm not opposed to some alternative or interesting or unheard of tactics when you're playing hardball like this. However, in terms of withholding federal taxpayer dollars, I think if you went back to finding out what the American people would want, I do not believe that the average American taxpayer would want to withhold their money from emergency relief in an area based upon political grandstanding. And I'm very pro-Trump. I do not think an average American taxpayer would agree with that.
I think this is owning the libs running amok a bit. Hey, you want some financial aid? F you, get voter ID laws, and what was the other stipulation? So
I don't remember what the other one was, and I can't find it here.
It was just like
sorry about that.
Owning the libs run amok, I think, is what's going on here.
By the way, I want to say this too. Pacific Palisades is not like 7th Street in downtown LA or like near Skid Row. Pacific Palisades is nicer than any city you live in your red state. Pacific Palisades is like one of the, if you're like, for instance, like wide areas and stuff, this is a very wide area and very, very clean and very rich. And this is like the idealistic area of what an America can look like.
And the second one was to release the water, which actually, so I think that one actually ties into the issue with the fires and stuff. The fact that the water situation in California is difficult to manage or whatever. Now I don't know
Save the fish.
Yeah, I mean that's what as far as I know the situation is. There is a smelt in a bay up in Northern California, and because of the way that the water is flowing and the way that they have the dam set up, it pushes the fresh water further out into the San Francisco Bay, and so the brackish water doesn't come so far in, making the habitat suitable for the smelt. If they allow the water to flow south into Southern California, then the brackish water would actually move further into the
Sounds
bay.
Like you're explaining a woman's mind here. It's just like, what?
I mean, I can do that too.
Upstream and downstream and smelt fish. I'm like, sounds like a mess.
But it seems like a mess. But the point that I'm making is, this little fish is alleged to be the reason why Southern California has problems with water. And I think that if that is the case, like if the situation is that, hey, the environmentalists are actually the reason why California doesn't have water to fight fires in Southern California, one of the most densely populated regions in the United States, and clearly needs water badly because of the winds and because of the other mismanagement of the forests and stuff, then I think that it's okay to say, look, this needs to happen. If you're going to come to the federal government and say we need you to fund it, then the federal government should be able to say you need to do these things to fix the problem. Now the voter ID, hold on, the voter ID might be a step too far, but the situation of like you need to make sure that you don't need to come to us again for the same problem, that I think might actually have some merit.
Yeah, I agree.
It could be like a state and federal government thing, and the only reason I think this is going to be, it's going to set a bad precedent. There will be a Democratic president in the future, and there will be a natural disaster in a red-leaning area when that happens, and you'd hate for them to have a dumb reason that they say that you guys need to accept, or we won't release more aid. So,
that's
or maybe I'm thinking too in depth about it. Own the libs all you want.
There's already strings attached to all sorts of things from the federal government. The reason that you have the drinking age 21 is because the feds say we won't give you any money for your roads.
That's different than a natural disaster. I don't think.
But it's still strings.
There was people saying that what Trump did in this case was an impeachable offense, and they were like, obviously you don't understand how these things go together.
He's going to get impeached over something stupid at least one more time in the second term. I foresee after the midterms, the Republicans are going to lose the House.
I really hope not. Not because I think that they'll actually have any kind of significant real issue that they're going to bring up, but because of the fact that he did have a clear victory in popular vote and with the Electoral College. So I can't imagine any kind of positive outcome of trying to impeach Donald Trump again. So
no, and also reminding you guys, California is also kind of a unique place because sort of like Chicago, it's run like a mob. I was really happy when Tucker touched on this. The fact that Maxine Waters doesn't even have to live in her district. Her supporters tried to kill me. You can watch this on YouTube. They tried to kill me. I had to get rescued. I had to jump into a stranger's car at a red light to get away from them while trying to interview them in front of her office. Maxine Waters. Anti-Maxine.
She's garbage.
Anti-Maxine, who looks like she's gotten too many vaccines. She's like, but she
melted wax.
She does, melted waxine. But she's out there now. She lives in like a mansion outside of her district. And I think Tucker touched on this where he said, directly, he goes, it's quite hilarious because there's no place that you can really point to with so much corruption where people can be so disliked by the populace, not only retain power, but rise to prominence. Like when I went and covered Kamala Harris during the original run for the primaries for the Democratic ticket, she couldn't fill half of a high school gymnasium. I have this on video. She couldn't fill half of a high school gymnasium, yet she became the vice president. She ascended, right, from attorney general. She became, senator. We have the same thing going on with many people, including Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi, Schiff, right? I mean, the list goes on. So that state is something to keep an eye on. And sometimes I do wonder if, at very much, if and only if, Maxine Waters and some of these people, we should keep an eye and realize that Trump might be playing long-term political strategy to break up a cartel, right? You don't know.
I mean, I think that Maxine Waters is among the worst in the
Would you or would you not?
Oh, of course not. Like I said, she looks like a melted wax candle.
Would you?
Hey,
vote for her.
If we right now we're looking at the Senate vote for Pete Hegseth, and the Republicans are now at 50, and the yeses are at 50, the noes are at a total of 49, and I think that means that even if the last vote is it is now, they need it, so it's 50-50, and they'll need the tiebreaker, which will be JD Vance. So it looks like, barring anything weird going on, it looks like Pete Hegseth will be the SecDef.
I think it was Susan Collins of Maine's and Murkowski of Alaska.
I hate these people.
Were voting. The thing is, though, they're in purple districts, and whatever, we can avoid the politics. What I think is interesting, though, is that there were whispers that Mitch McConnell was thinking about, backstabbing Donald Trump. Usually I have surprisingly good things to say about Mitch McConnell, but I'm surprised and happily surprised that he decided to go with Pete Hegseth and not ruin this nomination process.
I do think that this is going to be the situation with multiple people. I wouldn't be surprised if you see this with RFK. I wouldn't be surprised if you see this with Tulsi Gabbard. I wouldn't be surprised if you see this kind of result with Kash Pateli's either.
Why do our people flip on us? And I know
because
the answer to that.
Because of their constituency.
No, okay. That's like the simple answer.
Simple.
I meant why is
who really
why is it? But why is it that they do not that the Dems typically do not flip on themselves at an extent?
Well,
that
they do. You just need to look for those examples. They do all the time.
But every time you'll always see these same people.
So, for example, Joe Manchin in West Virginia here, when it's an independent, John Fetterman of Pennsylvania. If you ask any Democrats about these guys, they despise them.
Yeah, and
so
also
it exists, but we just exist in our
And also,
bubbles.
I think that Marco Rubio got it confirmed by 99 to 0.
Well, he was a
99 to
former
1.
senator too, so it helps once you're buddies with all the senators.
True, but still, it's so. I mean, whereas I understand the impulse that you're feeling, because honestly, Murkowski and Collins really are frustrating. But it's not really a situation where it doesn't happen to the Democrats or whatever.
I think of Joe Manchin as the strongest example of that.
Yeah, and there are others. What do you think of the argument that
technically though, or didn't he technically not vote along with the Democrats some of this stuff? It was.
Well, that's what I'm saying. A lot of conservatives will hold up Joe Manchin as somebody who votes on principle because his constituency is purple, so he's somebody who votes in favor of the interests of the people that he represents, as opposed to just voting on party lines.
Yeah. Is this what we're doing? Because Trump did wear a purple tie to the inauguration.
I thought that was about some type of claim to royalty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Look, okay, so Pete Hegseth, then he's gonna be confirmed, allegedly.
I don't know. There's no one else yet left to vote, and JD Vance will cast the last vote in case of a tie. I don't know if he's actually there in Washington to cast the vote. He should be, I think, right?
He was at the March for Life today, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So he's there. So he's, J.D. Vance as the tie-breaking vote.
He's probably going in.
He's
going to cast the vote.
On his way out.
This is why, by the way, elections matter. And I want to remind you guys, to you holier-than-thou people who told me, and a lot of people, that you had problems with Trump and that you weren't going to vote for him because things wouldn't be different. Well, let's start keeping a tally here. Tonight, things would be different. You, literally right here when we're talking about this, not saying that Pete Hegseth would have been appointed, but saying, look, you see J.D. Vance is coming to break a tie. Right now, the immediate Trump administration, not only who they're confirming, but also having to actually vote, do the split in the Senate. So let's say that we had a split in the Senate again, regardless, we had the same outcome right now, and who would be deciding what would be happening right now? It would be who's in power. So they would be getting who they wanted, and it would be at their own command. So right now, it's look, I'm very happy Trump's in office. And to the morons who have all points today were I didn't vote for Trump because he's not, pro-life enough. Look, I don't like IVF myself. I think it's an abhorrent, barbaric practice. I do not like abortion. I don't think anyone here loves it. I think people that even support it or believe it should be legal don't like it. I hope you don't like it, even if you support it. But at the same time, Trump releasing and pardoning the people persecuted for standing in front of the abortion clinics. He've always been very pro-life, also in the activism at the marches, supporting the activists in their place. The Supreme Court picks overturning Roe v. Wade. I mean, what we're seeing here is an absolute overhaul of the direction of the United States government, and it is going towards the right wing. And again, it's never going to be as much, but I just want to remind people, because I know, Phil, you know a lot of people too. A lot of people in my camp, your camp, different camps were just like, had their dumb reasons why it's like, I'm not voting for. My favorite one was, I'm not voting for Trump because he's going to let more Indians into office. Meanwhile, the other option was an Indian woman. So that was like, that never made sense to me. He's going to let more legal immigrants. We don't want any Indians in the country. Okay, here's an Indian woman.
A lot of people have been surprised at how fast he hit the ground running. Do you think part of that is because he's probably expecting to be impeached at some point in the...
Well, no, because look, the fact of the matter is he's only got 18 months to get anything done, because as of after 18 months, then people start running for re-election and stuff. Midterms, and people start paying attention to midterms and stuff. So he has to get as much done as he can. He's probably only going to get, if I understand correctly, there's probably 2 bills they're going to get. There's going to be an omnibus bill where you're going to shove everything in. And we talked about this the other day. And Tim was like, yo, they should not do this and not do that and not do this. And it's like, look, man, he's only going to get a couple options or a couple chances to do anything. So you are going to have to make deals, because we don't have a huge majority. So if you want things, you're going to get a bill that has a bunch of garbage in it. So everybody, like, write this down in your calendar now. When the next bill comes up for an actual vote, it's going to have a bunch of shit you don't want. It's going to have tons of stuff that you don't want. It's going to be full to the brim of stuff that you don't want. But if it has the stuff that you do want, you have to accept that, because otherwise you don't get anything. And fair enough if you're like, well, then let's not do anything. If that's your take, then fine. But if you want to get things done, if you want to actually save America, if you want to shrink the government, you want to actually make changes, you have to understand, you're gonna have to deal with the fact that we don't have the kind of majority where you can just shove through whatever you
ever
want.
Been married? You know what I mean? I'm just saying, it's like, get married and you'll find out, you have to make compromises, both of you guys. So I do think, by the way, I'm going to say that real fast to the people that do lean more extreme. I think we've been playing to a lot of that out there. And I know no one will ever like people taking a centrist position, and I'm not one. However, I will much rather take Trump's centrist vision for the country that's pro-nationalist than whatever Kamala and Joe Biden, the deep state, were bringing to the table. I don't know if I'm alone on that, but it's like, it is not a right-wing nationalist dream. But at the same time, I mean, when you talk about the better of two evils, we're definitely getting good stuff done. I think Trump is proving himself up front and proving people who said don't vote for Trump sort of to look a little silly. That's my personal opinion, and some of them are my friends, but he's doing a pretty damn good job. And if your whole life is, well, he could be doing better, could be doing better, then what the hell are you, dude? Are you buff? Are you perfect? Do you have everything you want? No.
That's the typical. That's one of the things that makes me loathe even calling myself a libertarian at all, is because the libertarians are just notorious for like making the perfect. Well, they make the perfect the enemy of the good.
Helping the left.
Stop it. They make the perfect
Trojan horse for the Democrats.
Stop it. They make the perfect the enemy of the good. They say, well, I'm not getting everything I want, so then I'm just going to go ahead and tear it all down.
By the way,
that's just a massive problem.
Bold prediction on how the votes will go on this huge omnibus bill. It'll be down party lines, and then with Thomas Massie abstaining or voting against.
Yeah, which is fine.
The same thing as the speaker race. So no goodies for him, I guess. So
he doesn't want goodies anyways. Look, the only thing that I want
his district should want goodies. Sounds like he's not representing them very well.
He keeps getting reaffected, so they can't want many goodies.
Hey. So does Maxine Waters.
Oh yeah, she'll get elected when she's dead.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm feeling pretty optimistic.
That popular. Wow. What?
No, but what is honestly,
she's a Democrat.
She is very popular.
Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
I'm saying if it's blue enough, it doesn't matter. They'll just vote for you because the party line says so.
Well, I think it's deeper than that. I think, yeah. I mean, look, I'm not going to get into it because YouTube doesn't like that stuff.
Plus, it's super chat time.
Yeah. Well,
great.
Is it super chat time?
Yes, it is.
Oh, he's like, let's get to this, please. All right, I guess we can do some super chats. Let's see here.
You did good, Phil. You did really good.
You did?
As a host. No, you did.
You did.
Oh, well, thank you very
much. Yes, I did.
In chat, did you guys have a good tonight with Phil hosting
I thought you did
IRL?
a really good job.
I know I did.
I mean, it felt like a different show, right? It wasn't. I mean, it's like a band, right? You can get a new lead singer. Just change your band name. It doesn't mean you're not good in the new band. Change your band name because you're a new band. That's my opinion. But it's like, it is a different show. But I would say this. You should get into podcasting. I'm kidding. I know you're into
Elijah,
you're pretty damn good. I'm very happy
like Tim's still here. Well, you still have the beanie on. It feels like he's still here.
Listen,
so.
Phil, you're doing really good tonight. But
who is that? Who's that?
I don't know.
Barack Obama.
He speaks really fast. He's like, well,
I thought that's like a Shapiro-Obama mix.
They're all morphing into one. It's a Shapiro pool, Shapool. It's one giant cabal. Someone said in the chat, like, you haven't even called out the Jewish control of the entire world. So there you go. There it is. I called Elad out before the show.
Why do you
Elad
think we didn't call it out? They're in control. We couldn't call it out.
No, I called out Elad. I said deport Elad. What do you think I said?
You exposed the Jews on IRL.
All right. So we'll do some super chats.
On Shabbat.
What do we
Give
get?
you my heart.
You want
my heart.
We'll start with Shane H. Wilder here. Shane H. Wilder says, after hearing about the asinine West Virginia regulations, I came up with this. Take me home, corporate roads, because it's clear I don't belong. West Virginia, I don't want you. Take me home, corporate roads. Cheers to that one. That's a good one.
I do want to mention that Morris.
No, go ahead.
Oh, that Morrissey, when he was campaigning for West Virginia, we were at an Olive Garden of all places. I told you guys this beforehand. And he came in and was just interrupting people's dinner to talk about politics to them. If there was anything that would make me not vote for you, it's to interrupt when I'm eating so that I can talk about your crappy policy.
Isn't there something so average Joe about meeting voters in the Olive Garden of all places? I don't know how things are in West Virginia, but
and I was
very down to earth. Hey, I'm a regular guy. I go to Olive Garden. You go to Olive Garden.
I did appreciate when he's like,
I get the breadsticks. And I did the Taco Bell of Italian. But by the way, to anyone talk shit on Olive Garden, it is pretty good. No, the breadsticks and the Alfredo sauce together. I was too poor to afford Alfredo sauce, and when we could afford, Olive Garden thought we were rich, so I grew up thinking that was like what rich people ate. And maybe it's my bias, but those breadsticks and that salad, there's nothing hits like the breadsticks.
I will take no Olive Garden slander here tonight.
I'm just saying, there's nothing hits. Their salad is colder than most. It's colder than
Look, if it's unlimited anything, it's for me. I don't know what to tell you.
I disagree. Let's see. Barrett 1313 says DEI will be rebranded. EOED. EEOE, Equal Opportunity Employment Department. Commies always play word games. And that is true. That is an actual true statement. Communists are always playing word games. Nothing is really, it's all the same stuff. It's all Marxist power dynamics, whether it be proletariat versus the property owners or black versus white or whatever. That's, it's always
critical race theory. Then we got to DEI.
Even now, when people, when you guys are talking about fascism, you're like, okay, let's settle on a definition first, because all of the definitions for all of these terms have been adjusted so much over the last few years that you don't even know what it means.
By the way, I don't think we ever got a definition. So it's hard to define these stuff when we
part of the reason why the communists play word games is because they don't realize it, but they're all descendants of Hegel, and Hegel said, look, history uses people and casts them aside. Hegel doesn't care about the person, and he never cared about who was saying what, and honestly, what was being said isn't the important part. It's the ideas behind it. So if it was Marx saying it, or whether it was Herbert Marcuse saying it, or whether it be, Angela Davis saying it, or whatever, it doesn't matter who's carrying the message. And it doesn't matter if the power dynamic that is being presented to you is the rich versus the poor or black versus white. The point is the revolution. It is always the revolution. It is never anything other than the revolution. The issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. So
that's why they can tell you that you can be racist, but somebody of another skin color cannot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like to say we're all racist. It's just how much you are or how much you aren't. But I mean, that's actually the truth, though. I mean, literally everybody is a little bit recognizing today. No, I'm saying everybody recognizes today that there are differences, and when they define racism as any recognition of any race or any differences, that makes you racist. Then they're able to control the terms because now they've made it a negative connotation, and they can weaponize it against who they want.
That doesn't matter because they also redefine it and say if you don't recognize the difference between
correct,
the
you have to
races,
be anti-racist. You have to. We're all racist. That's what I'm saying. They say that, so then you have to be anti-racist because it's in your heart. It's what's it called? Unrealized or your internalized racism.
But this is more. This is the dynamic you're talking about is just an example of the fact that it doesn't matter who's being called racist or actually what is being said. The idea is there is a problem and I must be in control to change this situation. It's about the revolution. It's not about the real problem. It's not about who has money and property and who doesn't. It's not about who is in control. It's about the people that are saying you're racist or you're a property owner, you're bourgeoisie, so you're evil. Those people are using this dynamic to assault the people that have what they want, and they will continue to do that until they get power over whatever it is they're looking for.
It's the same reason you see so many of them in charities and NGOs, because they understand that if they solve the problem of their organization, they are inherently going to go out of business. Same mindset.
Rest in peace, George Floyd revolution. That was what we heard.
Well, it's revolution, that's the important part. So let's see here. Autumn Fire, is that the one you're looking at there, Serge? Autumn Fire says the left is going to bitch and moan and sue and call everyone a Nazi for the next 4 years, just like last time. Correct. We cannot let that distract from the movement like they did last time. This is true. And I do think that the positive thing about the situation now is that the modern American has kind of grown tired of being called names for being pro-America, being called names for being like, well, I don't feel bad about my skin color. I don't feel like I should be, treated badly just because of the way that I was born. I think people are sick and tired of hearing Nazi. I think everyone, if you look at the way that people behaved about the whole, Elon Musk sending his heart out, they were very quickly, people were like normies on the right? People that 5-7 years ago would have been like, oh, they'd have been clutching their pearls. Oh my God, how could he do that? They're like, look, this is the same stuff they've been saying forever. And to their credit, these are the people that finally got around to looking at the original tape of the Very Fine People hoax, and they said, oh, they do lie about whether or not someone is a Nazi when they're calling people Nazi. Like, the whole Very Fine People hoax has probably been the best inoculation against the left's tactics that probably you could find.
Can I give a quick conspiratorial
Nope.
take on the Elon Musk stuff? No,
Canceled.
No?
Actually, I was like so.
Seriously,
you want to give it to me?
let it go.
That's ice. It's coming to get you, buddy. Deportation's coming.
Go ahead.
The conspiratorial take on the Elon Musk stuff is that this guy's way too smart to not know what he was doing, but he knew he'd have the plausible deniability of it. And Elon Musk loves the media attention, so he was baiting this, knowing that a lot of the leftist media would come out against him and that he'd have a bunch of people on the right defending him. He wanted the attention it was right after the Trump inauguration. Yeah. It was a perfect time to make him the news cycle. And I think Elon Musk, again and again, proven himself to be a savvy media actor, and he's very trollish, and I don't think he's beyond doing something like this to bait people into getting such a big reaction.
That honestly, even if you're right, I don't care, because at the end of the day, I don't believe that Elon Musk is actually a Nazi. Like, there's no part of me that believes he's a national celebrity.
It helped make him
Shut up.
It helped make his name the biggest name in the news cycle for a day or two, and people need to understand how valuable that is.
Fair enough, but again,
creating the paper trail so as they build the case. That's what it is, man. It's building the Google search. It's like the ranking of the people. It's like the articles start to build.
I don't believe that Musk is actually a Nazi.
No, I'm talking about why the media does it. It's like because what it is like you'll notice this, right? I used to work with Glenn Beck, and like he would have somebody on his show who would say something conspiratorial, and then the next day an article would mention something true he said, but to counter him it would say Glenn Beck, who recently hosted a virulent conspiracy theorist, said. And so it's creating this ranking, sort of like SEO human credit score that they bring onto people, that they can use their own articles as their own source to back up their own points. It's like using Wikipedia, but you wrote your own entry to support your own historical point. And that's why they do this. It's a circle jerk where they feel like they're justified in their worldview because I'm from New York Times, but someone from ABC said that you're a Nazi, and so I can quote ABC. But it's like, what world are you living in? Because that was also you under a different pen name. So it's, you know what I'm talking about in the media. They just use it as a way to justify their bullshit circle jerk worldview. And I think the rest of us that are sort of opting out of it are taking it for granted because, countries like the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, they're still stuck on the mainstream media circle jerk. We're sort of out of it. I mean, someone says that Joe Rogan's a Nazi. It's like, we're way past that. But right now, still in Australia, if you were on Joe Rogan as a politician, you could get disqualified because you were on a Nazi podcast.
I think the true circle jerk is the circular reporting. ABC reports, New York Times sources them, Reuters sources the New York Times.
Death by hyperlink.
So yeah, we're just going in circles with an outlandish claim, and then it gets cycled through, and next thing you know, it's on Wikipedia being accepted as truth.
I feel like it gets onto Wikipedia very early because that place is run by crazy leftist.
I heard on Timcast News that he was not a Nazi, so that's my source. So
yeah, I think you're right. I think I heard the same
Well,
thing.
the problem that I find with all that now is everybody just dismisses everybody else's news sources anyways. So the best thing you can do is to find an argument that can be bolstered through their own news sources.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, they're going to look at anything you say, well, that site isn't credible, so it doesn't matter.
I agree totally. Let's see here. What do we got? It's Jonathan Almer says, as an Aussie, I hate the talk that Finland should be neutral. No, I don't trust China. I want us aligned with the U.S., not told to play nice with both. I'm not sure what the hell he's talking about.
As a man, I want women to have free tampons. I don't know what that means. That's confusing, man. There was a young guy that liked to do that. Actually.
Young P. Chan says, Elijah, I love you, my nibba always, grower gang for life. What is he saying?
Okay, it's the fact that, look, life is not about what you're showing. Even if you're growing, you can. It's as long as you are able to show when it's needed. So we're the grower gang because we are able to show up when we're called upon, even if we're unimpressive.
The rest of the time. There you go. I'll leave the words to be clean.
That's my favorite super chat so far tonight.
Yeah. Grower Gang, we have stickers too. They're free.
Do you really have stickers?
Yeah. It's Grower Gang helping you grow into a stronger person in every place, from your heart to your Anyways.
Delmar says the other entries into NATO is simple. They want the massive warehouse of American pre-positioned hardware, tanks, helos, arty, etc., with minimum personnel for upkeep. America flies in the troops, and the tanks roll within 12 to 48 hours of an invasion. I mean, I think that there might be some truth to that, but stop it, Serge. Everybody, you guys should see the garbage that I have to put up with for when I'm filling.
He's naked, and we're uncomfortable
off camera. I think that there might be some truth to that, but at the same time, like, the United States is really, really good at the military is really good at logistics, right? Like, if you really piss the United States off, there will be a Burger King in your country within 36 hours. Like, they're going to have a Pizza Hut, a Taco Bell.
I know, it is crazy.
Olive
it's
Garden,
very true.
Lucky.
Yeah, an Olive Garden, and there will be
a skee ball playing Chuck E. Cheese. There'll be a mobile Chuck E. Cheese. Their kids will be there. You know, it's like crazy stuff.
No joke. So I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, if I do think that the U.S.'s ability to move massive amounts of military hardware and logistics, if there's anything that the U.S. is good at, it's that stuff, along with blowing up bad guys.
We're not bad. Look, we're actually not bad at war. Even when we lose wars, we're never actually losing.
No,
because the point is to keep the wars going.
No.
So it's like as long as we're continuing the buying of arms, we've never lost, because our goal is as long as those companies are funded, our military stays armed and bolstered. Our economy keeps growing. So I think we've won every war.
The United States is without question the best at war. We're terrible at politics. We do all of the engagement, actual fighting part, all of the getting the military out to places in the most remote spots on earth. We do all that better than any society or any country in all of human history. The thing we can't do is figure out how to end a war and figure out how to have actual rules of engagement that work. We can do the blowing stuff up part. Awesome. We're great at that. Figuring out how to actually transition from blowing stuff up to stopping. Who knows, man?
Like 16-year-olds getting pregnant earlier. They share common with the U.S. government. They don't know when to pull out. And that's the problem. It's like, it is always an issue, and we end up leaving a big mess.
Yeah.
And I just got to say, it is funny, though. And then when we pull out, it is pretty disastrous. But ultimately, that's why everyone's like, oh, they left weaponry in Afghanistan. I'm like, all according to plan. So, like, we got this. So I think I'm a little more sinister in that way. I feel like the banks and the military and all this stuff, we are not losing. All I want to say that to people like, we lost in Afghanistan. Bullshit.
They're like, what do you mean? We were there for 20 years.
Yeah, we didn't lose.
We were anywhere near
got all
that
the equipment
long.
sold that
Americans
we
don't lose wars; they lose interest.
Yeah. Look, I mean, if anyone remembers the stated reasons why we went to Afghanistan, like for the first 10 years that we were in Afghanistan, the reason that we were there was to capture or kill Osama bin Laden. If we'd have left May 7th or whatever, I think they got him on, the May 11th, they got him on 2011 or something like that. If we'd have left the next morning, we could have walked out and said, mission accomplished. We did what we needed to do, and that would have been an actual war that the American people said, we went in, we did what we had to do, blah, blah, blah.
Should accomplished Bush on the aircraft
that's
carrier.
exactly what, and it would have been legitimate. It would have been legitimate.
So
the Bush stuff was BS, but if they'd actually left after they went into Pakistan and found Osama bin Laden, if they'd have packed up and left, then the United States could say, look, we did what we came here to do. We got Osama bin Laden. Now the action is over. The military's operation is finished. So we got out of there. That would have been an acceptable situation to the American people. But whether it be poppies or CIA or whatever reason people want to go ahead and say we stayed in Afghanistan, that is what happened, and we stayed a decade or so longer than
just a million people and a couple $1 trillion later or whatever. I mean,
Let's just say Mr. Raytheon.
Wait, not a million American.
I said a million people.
Yeah. Mr. Raytheon is like, no, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. We spent millions and millions and billions of dollars.
I think it was a couple trillion, right? Over the life of the war. It was like 2 or 3. 2 trillion, yeah.
Just how we expected it to go.
It is. Let's see. Convincing Reality said,
it's crazy.
Let's not beat around the bush. The political function of foreign aid is a bribe. It secures influence, compliance, or support from recipient nations. I think that's actually a little too naive of a take. I don't think that he's wrong, but I think that it's too simple. Like I said, that money goes back into the at least when it comes to military funding, that money goes back into the United States. It goes to, people that are working for Raytheon.
That's the most sinister part about it, right? Is when people are talking about paring down on, sending weapons overseas and that our money shouldn't be going there. Like, well, it's going to American citizens. And people are like, yes, through your tax money that shouldn't need to be taken anyways.
Well, we just talked about this. There is no tax money. That it's not your tax money. They just print up the money when they want to. So, but anyways, but yes, your point is well taken. It is probably more nefarious that's the situation. So let's see some more super chats. Let's see here. The Emperor's Champion says, you fundamentally misunderstand how screwed up California is. If you don't have conditions to this aid, we'll end up with the same problem year after year. California is incapable of governing itself. I mean,
do we need to comment on that? I mean, it is governing itself. It is governing itself the way it wants to govern itself. Separate of the whole country. I just want people to say that's like, oh, they're not governing themselves. No, that is a specific and strategic way to govern a location, and they're doing it independent of the government until they need our money, until they need the rest of the country's money, like now, and then they come to us for money. So, and then they win every time. So they stay the same and they never change. It's all that remains. So, sorry, I was stupid.
Well, I like how you worked that in there.
That was stupid. But that is. I'm just saying, just because you don't like it doesn't mean it isn't working for them.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay. Let's see. Just Because I'm Free says the salt and brine that's left over from the desalinization can be sent up north and help to create ice. Just a thought. Water with high salt content has a colder freezing point. I mean, yeah, but how does that help create ice? Do you put water surrounded by the brine solution?
Can I make a fact? I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I make a fact check on something I said earlier? I was looking at updates from the Pete Hegseth confirmation, and McConnell did vote no.
Oh.
So that's what made it 50-50. I mistakenly cited earlier that McConnell wasn't going to stab Trump in the back, and I was wrong.
So he got back into his turtle shell. I was playing a Mario Kart, and I threw a McConnell, and
he's a turtle.
Won the race, but what the hell is wrong with that guy? Can we just talk about physiognomy and how evil people look evil? That's crazy, man. I'm not into plastic surgery, but do a face tuck, you ugly hag. Like, that's just
He's an 80-year-old man. I don't think he needs to look like a handsome
He's a 640-year-old demon. You know what I mean? Like, I challenge you.
He would actually somehow look more nefarious if he spent a bunch of money to look different.
So I think Mitch McConnell was heavily involved. If it weren't for Mitch McConnell, then Neil Gorsuch wouldn't be on our Supreme Court right now. So I think you do need to appreciate him for what he did accomplish while in office. I think if you're just taking him for the negative, you're missing the nuance that goes on.
Got confirmed right now, right? In the moment,
I think it's 50-50 in JD.
I think it's 51.
Well, yeah.
I think he just did it. I think that's what I'm reading, but I don't know.
Rumor, I when I look on X, I see people saying that he has been confirmed.
I don't know
if JD has actually cast the vote, but the ostensibly the plan that you hear is okay, 50-50, and so JD Vance can cast the record-breaking or the tie-breaking vote. So
Elijah, I wanted to ask, for all intents and purposes, isn't Pete Hegseth essentially a neocon though, for what he stands on? And
look, you're not going to like it. I'd say he's more of a Zionist than a neocon.
I mean, one and the same, the way you use them. No,
but how?
No,
I
but
mean,
all right. So just even worse. So he's
that?
a Zionist. So okay. So neocon.
No, I don't think. I would say that Zionist and neocon interests are oftentimes aligned because they both want war and they both have expansionist ideas, and that the neocons use Zionists because it helps meet their goal of endless war. But I don't think that the neocons would always need Zionists, and I think if the Zionists ever broke off from the neocons, they'd find a way, like I said, to expand NATO or something that has completely separate ideas. I think neocons are involved in so many other conflicts outside the Middle East. It's just that Israel's expansionism takes advantage of the neocons, I would say.
Back to Hegseth.
Yeah.
Do you think he's a good pick despite his Zionist credentials?
Do I think that he's going to run the military well? I don't know we had any other option, and I think he does love our country, and he does love the boys and the girls there, and I do think that he will at least lead with a position of care. Again, his policy, suggestions, or the way that he decides to implement our military to follow orders from the commander-in-chief, I think he'll take those orders directly, and I don't really know how much he's going to be deciding where we go to war or what. But if Trump decides we're going to go somewhere, if Congress, brings it into law, do I think Pete's going to do a damn good job about getting our Pizza Huts and Burger King set up quickly and our defense lines?
Supremacy.
Yes. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I think Pete Hegseth was a great pick for Donald Trump to make.
Yeah. I mean, I love his. Weren't they mad? Didn't they already call him a Nazi tattoo guy too?
Everybody.
I think they did sexual assault with him.
They did
That was
both.
worse.
the twofer.
That was Trump.
The Jerusalem cross is a Nazi symbol, even though it looks nothing like any Nazi symbol, and it is not a Nazi symbol when it's on the floor of the church that Jimmy Carter was presented in when people came to pay their respects to Jimmy Carter. That Jerusalem cross is on the floor, and apparently that makes it not. When it's on your chest, it makes it Nazi. When it's on the ground, it's not, or something.
We just like amalgamate them together, being like Pete Hegseth sexually assaulted Elon Musk's Sig Heil using his Nazi cross tattoo. That's a good headline, right?
Sounds like you're doing ad libs there.
Yeah, but it's like, hey, I just quoted everybody. So
True Trucker Joe says, I've sent emails and super chats and still am not on the show. This Yahoo doesn't understand the privilege that he has. Wow. Lol, JK, y'all are awesome.
Which
Texas
one?
17.
Who is the Yahoo in this
I'm the
specific
Yahoo.
situation? You or
maybe I'm
you? Me?
I think. Well, my last name's Eliyahu. Or, I don't know. Do you want to be the Yahoo?
I have a suspiciously Jewish last name too. So
Isn't your wife Jewish?
Some say.
Some say.
Some
Allegedly.
say.
We know who's really pulling
out.
the strings in that relationship. If you know what I mean. Those guys pulling all those strings.
Hey, she's already got me earning all the money that she controls.
Or was this a
all those
Netanyahu?
Did she do the hand?
Not very banker of her.
Yeah. You have no idea. She's already like, you make the money and I'll spend it. You like that? And I'm like, all right, here we go.
She runs the show. She get controlled by the Jewish.
Hey, do you know, by the way, this is actually a very random funny statement. So Black Twitter, right? It's its own breathing, organized. People don't know. So Black Twitter's its own thing, its own culture. I didn't make that name. They did, right? But they came up with this I don't know where they got it, but it went viral, millions of impressions, my family history. That my grandma was this woman named Adeline Schoenberg.
How did you get the attention of Black Twitter, Elijah?
Oh, do not ask me. I mean,
I literally just did. Come on, man.
Okay, well, it all started when I said that the Little Mermaid actress needed to apply for a visa to get from one eye to the other. They were so spread apart, and so then DDG, her boyfriend, who they broke up, by the way, now, and they have a child together. So I'm sorry, DDG, but you defended a woman who ended up splitting from you and leaving you. So learn not to be a simp. Yeah, I mean, oops. But on top of that, I mean, you wonder why they don't like me. But on top of that, and then also he libeled me and said some things that I'm. There's potential legal action still there. I'm already talking to lawyers. So we're, watch out, buddy. You might be black in the streets, but when we get into the courts, the Jews are in charge, and I am one apparently. So when he said that my parents were like Adeline Schoenberg from Ukraine and Romania. So the best part is now is they used to get mad at me and call me a racist and go at me for being white. Call me a Mayo monkey and all this stuff. And now, because they have identified my grandparents as being Romanian, Ukrainian Jews, the black community is so anti-Semitic towards me, it would even make James Lindsay shiver in his little boots. Because the point is like, it's like you go to my comments and it's black people being like, you stupid rat Jew, like in my comments, you know? And so they hate me because I'm Jewish now. And so I think it's even funnier because it's like, that's even greater than anything I've ever had. And it's gotten into like articles and stuff like The Secret Life.
What do the Groypers think of this?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't met any of them, really.
Elijah, how does it feel to experience anti-Semitism?
Wow, he is speechless. I can't even believe it.
Because
I put on Ron
Jewish,
Coleman's
right?
kippah just to blend in. No, you know what? I honestly, I mean, you've been in online long enough. Like, I love the hatred and I live off of it. And I honestly really do enjoy it. But experiencing the anti-Semitism, as long as I'm not going to become 6 million and number one, I think I'll be fine.
Hey, maybe, a lot of Jews learn from anti-Semitism to become Zionists.
I already started
maybe
complaining.
you could start your path, and who knows, there's redemption for everybody, Elijah. What's the next super chat, by the way?
Let's see.
I just want
redemption, right? You guys love that stuff. Don't worry, Elijah.
Heath
I get a
Hansen
discount
says,
if I put my own cream cheese on the bagel.
If you make enough money.
Heath Hansen says, Phil is correct. There are tons of handsome, talented people that do not have contacts, so are without opportunity. Look, if you are a handsome person, if you're attractive and you can't get some kind of job, you need to get off the couch because pretty privilege is real. Like if you're an actually pretty young lady or a pretty man, like an attractive man, you're living life on easy mode. Get out there and get after it. It's
you
totally
ate the genetic
true.
lottery, you bitch.
Yeah, like
when I see a successful, handsome, or pretty person, I give them a lot less credit than if I see somebody who's ugly.
Oh, you
and
think
successful.
the OAN hosts and Newsmax hosts were hired for their brains? I think they were hired for their personalities.
If you're a millionaire and you look like a foot, then you're like, what does that guy know?
Yes.
But if you're a millionaire and you look, you're like some beautiful person, it's like, well, maybe they married into it, maybe they, lucked into the job somehow.
Charlie
I have
Kirk,
reverse
he's
bigotry
talented,
against the
right?
pretty people.
Like,
It's why
I'm just saying, you see that smile with the gums, and you're like, that dude's smart as fuck.
It's why everyone knows I work hard.
Yeah, me too. Look, man, I'm not tall.
Is there a pretty person who works at this company? Everybody who works here is ugly.
I mean, I work here, so I'm not going to
Honestly.
say, even if there was, I don't think
So no, that's how you know it's a meritocracy here at Timcast.
Yes,
You know what's even worse, though, is it gets even worse in right-wing media because they would say that you have a face for radio, but that would assume you have a good voice. But then people like me, like I have a face and a voice for the books. You know what I mean? Like it's like
And you can't write,
I'm like in a written word and it's in Yiddish, so it's like but I mean like it is crazy how it is. They say it's politics for ugly people.
It is.
I mean,
All
Hollywood's
right,
for ugly
everybody,
people, so.
smash the like button, share the show with your friends, go to timcast.com and join up. Elijah, you got any parting words?
Yes, Baruch Hashem Adonai.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat
Okay,
shalom.
no, but no. Actually, by the way, I will say I do have a lot of Jewish family. You do know that, actually.
I'm unsure because I feel like you try to hide it.
No.
And
That's
you
true.
face
That's true. That's
anti-Semitism
true.
as a result.
No.
You have a long path
I
ahead of
condemn
you.
anti-Semitism. I condemn anti-Semitism, and to the Jews.
Why's
I
your
give them
hand
my
like that
full
when you
heart.
do that, though?
I give them my heart. No, but all jokes aside, I'm a troll, guys. I'm gonna get them in trouble. I just like to fuck around a little bit. I shouldn't have said that till the end, but I did say it twice. My bad. But I will say I have a new show out called Almost Serious on YouTube. It's brand new. We're starting it from the ground up. So if you want to follow this new project to be one of the first ones in on Fridays at 12 p.m. Eastern time, it's on YouTube and YouTube only. Go to Almost Serious or YouTube.com/@ the at Almost Serious TV, because Almost Serious was already taken, unfortunately. So Almost Serious TV. And go watch the show. It's really great. It's a little bit like my old show, You Are Here, and my other show, Slightly Offensive, brought together. So kind of serious, but not fully, and one-on-ones. And it's going to be expanding. We got good backers, and I'm genuinely I am shilling it. But if you like this show, you'll probably enjoy it. And it comes out in between Culture War and this. So if you're looking for something during the day, check it out. Almost Serious on YouTube.
Absolutely. My name is Elad Eliyahu. Elijah, it's been so long. I'm thankful we were able to have an insightful, thoughtful
Come on the
conversation
show, though.
like we have before. I will.
Come down.
I hope I don't make you regret the invite.
I'll put you on 3 shows. 'Cause I run a news organization, so you can host a news anchor show, and then we'll do the one-on-one, then we'll do the live show. It'll be great.
I'm looking forward to it, so be sure to check out Elijah's new channel. I covered the March for Life. I'm not a particularly pro-life person, but something about the March for Life, the people are so welcoming and kind, and I go to so many nasty events where people are generally mean and negative, and at the March for Life, it's a bunch of young, pretty people and with families and everything, so it was a very nice, uplifting event. I'm going to upload our coverage of that on the Tim Pool channel probably on Monday, so be sure to check that out. Brett?
Guys, if you want to follow me, I am on Instagram and on Twix at Brett Dasovic on both of those platforms. Pop Culture Crisis is live 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. You should check us out there. It's a lot of fun, guys.
Keep an eye out for more updates this weekend, and I will see you on Monday.